Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's big meeting. Obviously, with so many people here, we welcome all of you to the meeting this evening. At this time, I'd like to call the 5 o'clock Monday, May 13th, 2024 meeting to order. Ms. Peck, will you perform the roll call, please?
Sarah Brock, John Kreischer, Pat McKee,
Yes.
Jennifer Paoli, Joanna Reyes, Jane Roosh, Corey Sillers, Lance Trollope,
Here.
Jim Boucher.
Here. Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It is the mission of the Wausau School District to advance student learning, achievement, and success. And with that, I would like to recognize speakers and students who wish to make a public comment. But before we do, let me just give you a couple of reminders. The board recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on district matters. Please identify yourself by name and state your address. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes, and that will be identified on the board for you. So 3 minutes for each individual. With that, we have a large number of people that are going to be speaking, and so we will start right away. First person, Peter Johnson.
Hello, my name is Peter Johnson and I am 16 years old and I go to the EEA Learning Academy. What brought me to EEA is I was struggling in traditional school. I could not transition in time from class to class. I was getting marked absent. And one of those causes is I have dwarfism, which makes my bones shorter and harder and slower for me to walk at times. My parents are the main people who encouraged me to come to EEA. I did not want to come at first because I thought it was for a special school, and I was trying to fight them. And I did decide to shadow for the 3 days. And I ended up loving it. I noticed students were very welcoming and introduced themselves. I also, towards the end of the day, I was working on an assignment and I was getting confused, and then the teacher automatically helped me. And from that point on, I just felt I belonged and I was accepted as a part of their community. Another reason I went to EEA was during COVID. For 1 year, I went to WAVE because all in-person learning was shut down for a while. And we used Apex's curriculum, which is EEA's main curriculum. And I loved it because it was very simple and easy. When I shadowed for EEA, I missed a day because I was sick. And one thing that also helped me was I didn't fall behind and I didn't fall into that constant loop of, what do I have to do today? What do I have to do today? And then you can also catch back up when you don't have to worry about missing anything because you can just pick up on what you were working on the day before. And lastly, I would like to leave off, if these budget cuts go through, it would be one teacher to 45 students, which is a lot, and it is also harder because the students are working on many different subjects because we are not all in the same subject. And it would be harder to get that attention because there's just so many students. In the end, I would just like to please ask to keep EEA in its non-traditional learning environment, which has been offered to students for 19 years and counting. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Next speaker, Cindy Bodenheimer. Did I get that correct?
You did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
I'm Cindy Bodenheimer. My address is 2109 Edgewood Avenue in Schofield. I am retired from the Wausau School District. I founded EEA many years ago, and I was a traditional teacher. I'm just going to give you a little history because I'm not sure everybody understands. I was a traditional teacher, first teaching in elementary school. Then, when Horace Mann opened up, I moved to John Muir and started teaching 7th grade. I taught 7th grade, I taught 8th grade. I was a team leader. I watched kids come. We called them children who were falling through the cracks. They didn't qualify for special programs. They didn't get support for a million reasons at home. And they just didn't have what it took to make it into traditional school. We spent years researching what was the best for these children. My teams worked diligently to try and keep these kids in traditional schools and to make them fit, but they don't. They don't fit. They can't do a little biology here and a little algebra there. They can't transition. They don't adjust to so many different people. They need a smaller learning environment. We researched, I'm going to tell you, EEA, if you look around this country, you are not going to find a school that is better researched, more firmly founded in brain research, in educational research than EEA. We take those kids that just don't fit, that little group at the top of the pyramid that I'm sure you guys have seen a million times. The pyramid where that little tiny group falls at the top and you're just not getting to them in traditional school. And yet EEA has. They have worked with them. James here, he hit it on the head. I can pick up right where I left off. They're filling gaps. Kids are coming to them with 3rd grade reading levels, and they are graduating on level for reading, or at least at a reading level that enables them to read their documents for rent, their contracts for employment. They're getting exactly what they need emotionally, educationally, physically, everything they're taken care of, and even well beyond the school day, those kids are taken care of. They're great kids, and they deserve the very best that we have to offer, not a 45-to-1 ratio. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. Next speaker, Mark Johnson.
Hi, I'm Mark Johnson, 705 North 14th Street in Wausau, and I happen to be Pete's dad. And when I heard him talk and talk about what it has meant to him, I just, from the parent standpoint, and also as a former teacher and a current manager at a local business, saw, had to work with him, and basically he did go to WAVE, which didn't work real well for him. I taught math and science, and so I really did a lot to help get him through math and science when he was in WAVE. My wife is an English person. She did a lot of work with him one-on-one to get him through English, and the thought of sending him to East when he finished up at WAVE was not a good, didn't feel like was a good fit for him, for physical reasons and also because he does much better in a smaller setting. And so we're really happy with what we found in EEA. He's finishing up his 2nd year, and the thought of EEA going away or basically being starved the next couple of years with understaffing when I heard about that, it was pretty upsetting. As I said, I taught high school and I taught at North Central Technical College, and I've seen EEA's graduates as an instructor at NTC and as an employer at a local company. And I've seen people who learned to show up, learn to complete tasks, learn to, schedule their day and plan it out and get through things, and people that maybe in the past fell through the cracks. I'm old enough that when I was in high school and middle school, we called it junior high back then, but there really were two options. Those options were you were able to adapt and get through the traditional mainstream, or you dropped out. There really wasn't much of anything in between. There was really nothing in between. I was at a decent sized district in Eau Claire. And the fact that there are options now, yes, there's WAVE. WAVE doesn't work for everyone. There's EEA. But those have gone away. With EGL's demise, that no longer exists. The options are getting less and less in the Wausau School District. And so I hope that we sufficiently fund and staff EEA to keep that open as an option, because to, basically force all these kids back into the larger setting that they've already, determined doesn't work for them, isn't a real good option. I'm not happy with the thought of having to do that, especially right as he is about to graduate, hopefully in a couple of years. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Next speaker, Cosmo Mathis.
Hello, my name is Cosmo Mathis. I am a sophomore at EA Learning Academy. I live at 1005 North First Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin. I went to a middle school in the Wausau School District for 6th grade after attending Montessori for my entire elementary school career. The change was hard, difficult, and scary. I never had homework before, and I never had a teacher actively talking to my whole class. I learned well, but I can't say that I learned much. At Montessori, I got ahead in my school because of the independency of charter schools. I was also used to the small class size, and I liked staying in the same room the whole day, feeling comfortable in my environment. The constant class changes prevented me from getting comfortable and being able to fully comprehend anything. I had good grades, but it wasn't fun. I did the bare minimum and got by. Towards the end of the school year, however, the pandemic came around. We were sent home, and I stopped doing my work. It didn't even matter that I stopped. My grades were locked. Everything was excused because it was a hard time that everyone was struggling with. Eventually, at the end of the year, I decided I was done with John Muir and enrolled in EEA for my 7th grade year. When I started at EEA, I was extremely comfortable right away. I felt welcome and accepted in my environment. I have gone through many rough patches while there, but that's not anything to do with it. The staff at EEA have helped me through every bump in the road. I would not be who I am today without the help of my wonderful teachers. So in regards to what this whole tangent is about, I need to have the teachers that I have had. I have always had 3 certified staff to rely on in EEA, as well as at least 3 paraprofessionals. With our current enrollment for next year and the plan that is under discussion in the school board, we would only have 1 certified staff member, leaving us with a student-to-staff ratio of 45 to 1. To add on to that, we would be missing a certified English teacher, leaving us without an official school license, from my understanding. Also, 1 teacher and 1 para would not be enough to grade all of our work. No student would be able to complete any class. There would be too many students in one room, no one would focus, and everyone would be distracted. Everything needs to stay how it currently is, or at least let us have 2 certified staff, which would not be as bad as everyone in one room. With the current proposal, we would be Please keep things the same, regardless of budget cuts.
Thank you, Kaylee. Next speaker, Kaylee Tesh.
Hi, my name is Kaylee Tesh. I am 16 years old and a junior in high school at EA Learning Academy. I live at 806 Dunbar Street, Wausau, Wisconsin. Before attending EEA, I struggled with anxiety, which had taken a huge toll on my life at school. I felt that I didn't have anyone to depend on or support me during my 6th year at John Muir, and the stress of making sure I got my work done on time, kept my grades up, and showed up to school every day led me to become less motivated. I stopped coming to school every day, which had become noticed by my parents, and I decided to be honest and tell them that a traditional setting wasn't for me. I tried WAVE, but realized I wasn't motivated enough to do my work at home and decided to look for another option. I had been introduced to EA by my siblings, who had previously enrolled here before. I heard great things about its community and learning environment and chose to enroll my 7th grade year. When I started at EEA, I had been the only 7th grader there, along with many high schoolers. I felt that I didn't belong at first, but EEA staff has provided me with many resources to help me guide me through my first year. EA has also given me the ability to work at my own pace through APEX, the curriculum they provide us to work on our classes. Working at my own pace has helped me get through my classes easier and reduce the stress that comes with getting my work done on time. Despite struggling with opening up and making new friends at first, I have made many friendships since I've been at EEA and built deep relationships with many teachers as well. These relationships have given me personal insight and better self-worth. There have been times where I struggled to come to school every day due to my anxiety, but personal connections I made with students and teachers have made it easier for me. If EEA were to have 40 to 45 students in one room with one certified staff member and one paraprofessional, the classroom would be chaotic and students would be unable to focus and get their work done. This change would not only make it harder for students, but it would also be difficult for the teacher to accommodate each and every student individually. Without at least 2 certified staff members and 2 paras, EEA would not be able to provide students with the support they need in order to succeed and graduate on time. Please consider our words and don't change our school.
Olivia Franklin.
I'm Olivia Franklin, and I live on 160 Apple Street. Hello, my name is Olivia Franklin, and I am a junior in high school. As a child, I began my education at John Marshall Elementary School, where my needs were not being met even with an IEP due to my ADHD, dyslexia, and dysgraphia. My mother educated me until I requested to be enrolled in a brick-and-mortar school for the rest of my primary education. Shortly afterwards, COVID-19 began, and my ambition was put on hold until my 9th grade year. I enrolled in Wausau East High School, which was followed by news about being on the autism spectrum and having social anxiety. I never thought I would have had anxiety because I was so extroverted and was never anxious around other people. Upon my re-entrance to public school, I found myself extremely anxious nearly all the time. Additionally, there are a lot of inappropriate actions and language being used. There was a lot of inequality in terms of race, sex, mental and physical disabilities, and academic barriers. Plus, I did not feel like I belonged, as people talked about how I wasn't like them enough because I didn't look like them, act like them, or talk like them. I was commonly made fun of for my religious and cultural differences. This took a toll on me and made me isolate myself more and more as the years passed. I desired to be educated somewhere where there would be fewer people and where people would not be so detrimental to me. My mother suggested a few options, one of which was EEA. We carefully thought about the changes that would be included by that, both positive and negative, and we decided that it would be a good fit. We learned about the school schedule, the volunteering opportunities, and much more. After a tour, I shadowed the EEA for 3 days. I waited until the next semester to join EEA. Upon entering EEA Academy, I noticed that all of the stresses I had experienced at Wausau East had begun to mitigate. I felt like I could be myself. I was a lot more focused on my learning, which I presume is since the education was a lot more interactive and there were a lot less distractions and it was more quiet. Over time, I have been able to be myself freely, which I have seldom accomplished in the traditional school setting. In addition, I excel because the teachers are very supportive and the student body is small. However, that may all change if the elimination of certified staff ensues. If the proposal is accepted, there will be 40 to 45 students per one teacher. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. I'm thirsty. Hold on. Sydney Raymer.
Hi. Here. I'll grab my water quick. We'll just all look at the cute baby. Yeah. All right. Okay, now I'm ready. Sydney Raymer. My address is 921 North First Ave. I'm a 2012 graduate of EEA, which shockingly makes me feel very old, very, very old. So I transferred from East after my sophomore year. I took the initiative after third quarter, and I went into, marched into Jeff Lindell's office, and I was like, this isn't cutting it. I need something different. So he essentially laid out my options, the charter school or the tech. And he said, I think you're better than the tech. Don't get me wrong, those options are great if you choose to go that route. I was not some pothead sitting around, skipping school, feeling like there's nothing to do with my entire life because I had no hope. I had two sisters at home and two parents who worked retail. Sorry. So instead of doing my homework, I was helping, thanks, a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old with their homework and teaching them to read. God, some of my former students made it through their speech without getting choked up. When I ended up at the charter school, everyone was super understanding of my responsibilities. I had a part-time job. I had two sisters I had to take care of. I did not have time for my own homework. I needed to be in and out with no responsibilities of schoolwork when 3:30 hit. So when I got to the charter school, I ended up being able to retake my classes that I had essentially failed because I did skip school, so that's on me. I was able to continue to have my job after school. I still have great relationships with my teachers. I was that kid that was pretty belligerent, definitely not the greatest, but you still liked me because I was funny, obviously. But I definitely could tell you what I thought, and not in a great way. I truly don't think I would have graduated from high school. I think I would have turned 18 and been like, bye, and never looked back because I was worried about paying our rent and our electricity bill and not going to school. Okay, time's up.
Thank you very much.
She's kidnapped my kid.
Next speaker, Danielle Delinsky. Did I get either one? Close. I don't like to be close. I try to be accurate.
All right, it's a tricky
Go
one.
ahead.
Hello, my name is Danelle Tylinski, and I'm one of the teachers that you are considering letting go today. I've honestly been struggling with that. Struggling mostly, I started struggling because the day after I got the news from my administrator, a PR email was sent out praising the district's efforts to attract and hire new staff. I hope the irony inherent in attempting to attract skilled teachers while not renewing a hardworking English teacher with 4 years of experience, who graduated with a 4.0, who's working on her master's degree in literature and composition, all while running gaming club and student council at Wausau East, is not lost on you. It's definitely not lost on me. I'm also struggling because this was my dream job. And despite barely being able to make rent, despite my wage not keeping up with inflation, despite the daily stress of the job, I loved it here. I would have never left if you weren't all telling me to go. But I'm mostly struggling because the Wausau School District, as you said to start this meeting, says its mission is to advance student learning, achievement, and success. And yet, to fix the budget, you choose to let go of the very people who are advancing students' learning, achievement, and success. New buildings do not advance student learning. Turf fields do not advance student learning. Administrator salaries do not advance student learning. Truly working towards this mission would mean retaining the trained and talented staff that you have, as research shows a direct correlation between teacher turnovers and student learning gaps. Truly working towards this mission would mean retaining positions in departments like English and math, which are directly impacted on student report cards and school report cards. Truly working towards this mission would mean supporting your schools equally in order to attract families to the district, not undermining their reputations and eroding public trust. I cannot control any of those things anymore, but you can. So tonight, when you consider us, I hope you remember that every decision you make creates waves, and that you consider the ripples of your actions carefully. For my coworkers' sake, I hope that you take time to step into our schools, to see what we all do. For the community's sake, I hope that you focus on always asking for input from staff and students, not through biased impersonal surveys, but through open and honest dialogue. But for our students' sake, I hope that you always think critically and ask questions about the information that you are given. More than anything, I hope that you always remember that what should come first is what's best for them, or you will have a deficit in more than just funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie Johnson?
My name is Melanie Johnson. I live at 1422 North First Avenue in Wausau. I am here in place of my son because he felt like coming to the board and speaking on his behalf was not going to be worth his effort, because he feels like you guys are going to make the decision to cut the teachers instead of thinking of the students. He goes to EEA right now. He went to John Muir Middle School and struggled with staying focused and keeping up with others. His letter says, "My parents heard from different parents about EEA, and I tried it out after my first year. I succeeded. As the next couple years of EEA have gone by, I have gotten more comfortable with schedules and teachers. The ability to have 3 certified staff gives each teacher a chance to have a lunch break and rotate around. If you follow through the proposed budget cuts, there will be 1 certified staff and 1 paraprofessional to 40 to 45 students. EEA has helped him through his anxiety and other struggles through his learning disabilities that he has. He struggled all the way through 6th grade in John Muir, and then through COVID, even at home with EEA online. He was looking at trading to go to WAVE in his junior year, because he is a sophomore now. But I don't think it is the best for him when he struggles to stay in front of it. He would rather get off of it. I've learned that from COVID. I know that EEA has created a better environment for him for learning, and he has done very well with his school, where he is now able to maybe graduate next year in his junior year and do an apprenticeship. But that was because he was able to learn at his own pace through EEA in his one classroom of 20 students, and be able to still get help from each of the teachers that come through the 3 staff and the 3 paraprofessionals that are in the grades right now. He is able to go and have each individual learning if he has questions from those staff. When you guys do the budget cuts, it will take away from that, where you are leaving those students with just 1 staff, 1 paraprofessional, with 40 to 45 students who range from grade 6 to 12th grade. And they struggle with a lot of stuff in their life. All the education that he says at EEA is done through a program called Apex Learning. It is a program where you have worksheets and study guides that you go through. When you have questions, you can go up to the teacher and they can walk you through it. With only 1 certified staff and 1 paraprofessional proposed for next year, it will take much longer for the teacher to grade students' work and help students when they are stuck. This isn't affecting just the students, it's affecting the teachers too. With only 1 certified teacher and 1 paraprofessional, the teachers won't get the necessary break.
Tied it all together. Thank you. We have 2 more. I would presume you'd have no problem, Board, to listen to the next 2. Okay. Allison Johnson.
Hello, I'm Allison Johnson. I live at 1422 North First Avenue, Wausau, Wisconsin. So I am a recent graduate from EEA. I graduated about a month ago, and thanks to all the staff, I was able to graduate early. I have had so much help thanks to these staff. I joined EEA my freshman year of high school, right after 8th grade with COVID. I was struggling throughout elementary and middle school, and all my teachers, they saw I was struggling, but they told my parents, oh, she'll grow out of it. I never did. Thanks to the staff at EEA, we learned and found out that I have dyslexia, and thanks to the staff, we have found different ways for me to work around it and find different ways for me to learn. If the budget cuts do go through, it will affect how the students get the help they need. Thanks to the staff, I was able to finish all my English classes by my junior year of high school, and I only had 3 classes I needed to do this year, so I was able to graduate a full quarter early. So, but yeah, thank you.
Well done.
And this one's going to school to be a teacher now.
Thank you even more so. Junior Trevino.
Hi, my name is Junior Trevino. I am a freshman at EEA. Before EEA, I attended Wausau West. At Wausau West, I started getting very distracted with getting into trouble with other students and trying to prove myself to others. I was nothing but disrespectful. Every time my mother received a phone call about my bad behavior, it broke her heart. She cried to me almost every day. The worst thing at the time, I didn't even acknowledge anything she had to say. Then she had told me about her life having to raise me and my older sister at a young age. She had a lot of struggles, and just hearing what my mother went through, it hurt my soul. My life was nowhere close to being as bad as my mother's had been. I gave her a hug, and I told her I was sorry for everything. I realized that my behavior was not only hurting myself, but also the people who cared about me. She inspired me to become a great person, and that I can do anything I set my mind to. She's the strongest person I know because she still managed to graduate high school as a young mom and is now successful as a businesswoman. I asked her to please guide me in the right direction, so she brought me to EEA. I made a decision to turn my life around and make better choices. At first, I thought I didn't belong here, but after a short time, I made some friends. Then I started to feel like I belonged. I was at the right school with the right friends. The teachers at EEA, they have provided me with one-on-one support that helped guide me through my classes and make sure I succeed. I joined JAG, then I joined the Student Lighthouse team, which both have helped me become a better version of myself. Now I'm thriving at EEA. I'm no longer the disrespectful kid I was. I am excelling. My family noticed my changed behavior, and they told me that they were all proud of me. It made me feel amazing. I want to be able to graduate from EEA with no problems and attend NTC to become a skilled barber just like my mother. The worry I have is, what if there's only one certified staff with 45 students next year? Some students struggle to get along with one another. If there's a whole class full of people who do not like each other, or people who goof around, nobody would get work done and things would get out of control for the teacher. I do not want it to be miserable for our teacher to control a classroom that's too full. One of the main importances at EEA is how we as students learn differently. We all learn at different paces and have different learning styles. It would be very difficult for everyone to succeed with just one or two staff at EEA. Please keep our school the same way that we always have had it. We just want it to be the same. The students and the staff members, we are all one big family. We do not want anyone to leave us. Having the right environment and teachers is very important for our success. I am incredibly saddened because everything could change for a lot of people, not just myself or students, but for the teachers as well. Thank you for taking your time to listen to my story, and I hope it can help the school board make the right and smart decision.
Thank you, Junior. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. And I'll just throw this in. Thank you, students, for all your comments. You are. Come on up. You got everything.
I am Christy Lenzo. I live at 5700 County Road U, and I am a nurse in the community. I'm actually currently working in a pediatric clinic, but I've also been blessed to have 2 children in the EEA program. So never in a million years did I believe one of my children would need to attend EEA, let alone 2 of them. I've always considered myself to be a supportive, caring, there for my children, educated mother. But what I've realized is that my children's success is not always up to me. It includes support and education in the community as well. And really, it takes a village to support these kids, and that's what the EEA advisors help to do. So the EEA advisors often notice or have noticed that my children or my child is having an off day before that they even realize it. So they reach out via text, email to notify me and my husband right away, like, okay, your child is having an off day today. Both of them, unfortunately, do struggle with anxiety, depression. They have some learning disorders. One of them, who is in EEA currently, my 15-year-old, she's struggled with panic attacks recently, social anxiety. And what I would like to say, my 19-year-old, went through EEA. He graduated a whole semester early, so I honestly never thought that he would even graduate. He had ADHD, anxiety, depression, struggled to make friends, and was picked on frequently throughout school. He had an IEP throughout middle school, but it wasn't until EEA during his sophomore year that things started to change in a more positive way for him. Thanks to the advisors, the small classrooms, the small advisor to student ratio, and the alternative ways of learning in EEA, he was able to walk that stage last May. Now, at that graduation, I cried like I'd never cried before, not only because of my child, but the stories that were shared there were so touching, just to realize how important EEA really is for many in our community. I talked a little bit about my 15-year-old already. She, again, does struggle with anxiety, panic attacks, and Mrs. Winterly, her advisor, has a passion for helping children like both my son and my daughter. I believe that is what, or she is what helps to keep my daughter on track most days. When she is having those panic attacks or, again, having the off days, she's able to tell us before Ayana even realizes it. We do have a 504 in place for her, but without close attention from her advisors, I feel she'll struggle even more than she already does. She was lost and pushed under the rug in the traditional high school setting. Now, my husband and I try our best to guide her in the right direction on a daily basis. We use local therapy options. We have a close relationship with her pediatrician, but without the extra support in school, roughly 8 hours or a third of her day, I'm fearful of what is to come in the next school year. How can one advisor care for 40 children? I voted yes on the referendum for the new buildings. I would have voted no if I knew cuts were going to be made. We need teachers.
Thank you very much. And I've always believed when somebody makes a mistake, they should own up to it. That was my mistake, Chrissy, so thank you for speaking up. Appreciate that. All right. Thank you, everyone, again, for your comments. We do appreciate it. We are listening to you, and all of the emails and letters that we have received, we thank you for that as well. So, thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item. To approve the consent agenda, appointments, additional staff, replacement staff, contract increases, separations, resignations, contract decreases, terminations, leaves of absence, retirements, minutes from the regular session of April 8th, 2024, special session of April 22nd, 2024, and the special second session of April 22nd, 2024. Payment of bills and budget status and investment report. Donations to the district now. We greatly appreciate donations from Jean Nocio, Fireside Book Club, First English Church, Forest Park Neighborhood, E. Thomas Smiley, Clemens Insurance, First Impressions, Gastrointestinal Associates, M3 Insurance, Jerome Motter, Law Offices, Mankey Surgical Associates, Wausau West Diamond Club, Wausau West Warrior Hockey Booster Club, and Weld Riley. I'm seeking a motion to approve the consent agenda with great gratitude for donations to the district.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 7, approve design plans for Wausau West athletic fields. As referendum projects for each facility reach the end of the design phase, 95% completion, the board will see the designs and budget and be asked to consider approval of these plans to be issued for bidding. Here, 95% complete designs are being shared for the Wausau West athletic fields, and the board is being asked to consider approval for use in soliciting competitive bids. And bring in another chair, I guess.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Here with me tonight, I have Russ Schumacher, who is one of the principals at Nexus, who's been here before, and Sharon Gould, who is our project manager for the whole referendum construction projects. So I'm going to jump all the way to the last slide. I'd like to give a brief update on the referendum budget as a whole. And before I dive in, I'd just like to note that these funds were designated specifically for the referendum. So any budget amount here is not related to any operational budget amount that we talk about at any other point tonight. So a couple changes that you'll see, both bolded and underlined. We can start at the top. The East High School bids came in over $900,000 under the budget, so it's no change in scope or anything. That's just the bid budget. And then Moving down, you can see that the West Athletics Phase 2, so that's the majority of that is the turf field, did come in about $400,000 over the updated estimate that was shared with the board in January. So that 1.6 number you see there, that was the initial original budget. In late winter, we shared an updated number with the board that was closer to 1.8 million. So you can see that the design budget did come in at $2.2 million. We will talk about that more throughout this presentation. And if you have any specific questions on the West Athletic portion, if we could just hold them till the end of the presentation, that'd be great. And then the one other number that changed is the projected interest earnings. So up until a couple months ago, we'd been sharing a $5.5 million number. Our partner, who we work with, is feeling more confident in some of our interest earnings and is comfortable sharing closer to an $8 million interest number for our earnings. So what this does for the overall budget, it takes it from the previous number we looked at was about $2.5 million over budget. And I know that there's brackets around that $430,000, but that means we are about $430,000 under budget where we sit right now. That is inclusive of the East bid and then that West Athletics number. Any questions on the budget not related to the West Athletics?
I'll ask you, the 1.2 then, because of our increase in interest, could get covered?
As of right now, yes, it could get covered. And that is included in this number. So, any other questions?
So the 1.2 for the community room, that's included, so that even with that, we would still be about 400 under.
Exactly.
So what do we have left?
So
percentage, I don't know if you want to do it in a percent or a dollar amount, how close are we to the end of our bids, basically?
We have Horace Mann and Montessori left to bid yet.
Okay.
The other three elementaries bid last week, and we're compiling the numbers, and we'll share those tomorrow. But that's the last big piece, other than the additional elementaries as you're deciding what to do as we move forward.
Right. And that, I mean, because that was what we were holding off on with deciding with the West Community Room, is we wanted to get close enough to the end that we were confident we weren't taking away from any elementary project.
Correct.
So it sounds like we're getting pretty close.
Yes.
Yeah, we're definitely getting closer, and
Okay.
it'll be pretty soon that we have numbers on Montessori and Horace Mann, and those are really the two last big pieces. Anything else? Jane?
Yeah, I'm looking at the original referendum question,
Mm-hmm.
and we had budgeted for artificial turf at each high school roughly $2 million. Are we looking at what we spent on athletic phase 1 and 2? What else is included in that?
Great question. Sharon, do you mind answering what else was included just in the work? I can speak to any specific referendum questions.
Site work as well.
Yep.
Athletics.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to talk, you can talk about the first package where we had turf at East, the infields for the baseball, lighting for some of the sites, lighting for tennis. I guess we'd have to go back to get the delineation of all the items.
Okay.
This West was held off on as we wanted to give the board time to decide where the best long-term location for that turf was. Conceptually, it was planned kind of in the middle of just the field in West, not within the stadium.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So I'm guessing that the rest of the money for that just came out of what we had for East and West.
correct.
Okay.
It was a complete budget. That 1.6 what was segmented out,
Yeah.
and the remaining amount of that, it wasn't an additional amount. It was the part of that site work.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else on the budget? Okay, then I will turn it over to Sharon. We'll go back to the beginning of this presentation.
Excellent. Well, hello, everybody. So here tonight, we're here to discuss the athletics phase 2, which is the multipurpose field at West High School. So just to re-summarize, we're here to go through where we started and what's changed along the way, and then also to ask for approval for the final design and budget to go out for bid. So here's the general referendum concept. We have two what we call measures that we are included as the athletic field lighting for the main field, and then athletic field turf, which is the synthetic turf. So that's the base referendum scope of work. Just to note, we are looking at lacrosse, soccer, and football to be used on that field. So the staff and district involvement that we've had five main design meetings, and we did have one meeting with the city to get approval to have the field lights.
Just ask a question. You said lacrosse, generally speaking. That's lacrosse for boys and girls, correct? Correct. That's the combination so that the lines will be put on and the goals will be identified in the different parts of the field, correct?
Correct. For boys and girls lacrosse, the dimensions are slightly different. So just like we did at East, there is a unified line that you can put on that meets the criteria for both fields, or for both boys and girls, and that's what West will have, the same as West East does.
So we want to make sure we identify that the genders and
for sure,
and everything is lined up appropriately.
So the field will be completely lined with football, soccer, and the unified lacrosse lines.
And so we did have a lot of feedback from Jason and the coaches, facilitated by Jason and Jeb from West High School. So with that, I just wanted to point out, we mentioned it previously, we did have a conceptual field that was identified preliminarily in the center field to the north of the school. Based on the feedback from everybody, it was determined as a group to have that field in the middle of the track, so we could take advantage of benefits of the press box, fencing, being able to utilize the track with the field lights so we could have evening events, things like that. But that was a research decision that came from the group. So here's the layout now. It's rotated 90 degrees. We have a logo that Jason took to the school and the staff to get feedback on. I'll touch over on that in a second. We do have the logos, the end zones are identified, and part of the work that's included in this scope is this new synthetic turf that's going inside the track. We have new soccer goals and goalposts. One thing we are doing is salvaging the existing goals to be able to reuse elsewhere. Part of the project here, and we'll get into that a little bit more later in the presentation, is we did need to put in a new D area. The D area is defined where the high jump generally goes. So that will have track surfacing on it and drainage. The surface water drainage, along with the D area, is part of adding the turf field, tying into the existing storm. We did have to extend that a little bit. We also are considering a new water line to come in for field maintenance and cleaning up. And then we did finalize the logo since we put this together. So yes, Jason, if you want to talk about how you went about that.
Sure. It was all part of the design meeting. So Rattler Design is who kind of is the subcontractor who's done the design for the turf field. There's been a bunch of different layouts with different colors. Basically, we kind of agreed that was the logo we wanted, and the question became, do we want the blue warrior head trimmed in gold or the gold warrior head trimmed in blue? And we went back and forth and randomly asked some people. Ultimately, we decided to put it out to all staff and students. So they got a survey, and it was open for about 3 days, and it came back probably about 60 to 40 to go gold warrior head instead of blue. So that's how we came to that decision.
Thank you. So electrically, we are adding in field lighting, and what you see here is a drawing that just shows the pole locations that are going to be illuminating the field, and generally the orange is just showing the direction of the lights. And you can see here that not only does the lights cover the field itself, but the orange lines are going over parts of the track, some of the smaller events, high jump, long jump, triple jump. I think we can get it into the discus, I think, and then have other solutions for where the light starts to fade away. So it really utilizes the lighting for all the sports that are going to be in there, using it in the evening. We did work with the city as well to make sure that it worked within their constraints. Other things that we're doing is we're adding in electrical upgrades to the baseball press box to the north, so that we got a lot of good, feedback that it was really important to be able to handle that in this, and it made a lot of sense to do it in this project. We're also looking at other electrical upgrades around the field as required to have a fully functioning field. And then we are providing some raceway for fiber optics to help support some of the systems that will be installed later.
I'm not going to do your job, but I would assume that all these lights, and with new lights as they are today, are more directed so that the neighborhood is not going to be affected by these lights as well, because of the fact that old lights would diffuse out to everyone and wake everybody up and be a neighborhood problem. These are very directed, correct?
Correct, and that actually has to be reviewed with the city, and that's what you see up there is the photometrics, as they call it, which shows the foot candle levels so that they can be maintained through not only the field, but the ancillary track areas, but also you have to show that they cut off by the edge of the property and it doesn't pollute the neighboring areas, much like we had to do with the baseball fields.
And the city did approve for us to proceed. So with that, I will.
As far as the budget goes, initially, the initial conceptual budget, which was part of the larger overall budget that was sliced out, that Jane had just asked about, we took that, and then in late winter 23, we updated that for inflation to get kind of the middle number, which we'll see in a little bit. And then as the discussions went, it was moved from the initial conceptual middle of the east of where it's currently located into the stadium area. And then we had to get far enough along after the survey was done, soil borings were done, and the design work was done. When we get to that 75% level is where we put another estimate together. We do our own internal estimate, then we hire an outside third party as well to do an estimate, and then we come to an agreement, and that's what the agreement was $400,000 above the previous estimate that you saw late 2023. Based on the reason for the increase is the location of the field proved more challenging than kind of just an open field to get the electrical infrastructure in and around. The construction to work on kind of that elevated surface where you have basically the the landscaping and the retaining walls to get up and do the work. The field was tighter inside the track than it was on east, where the field was put on the inside. So with all of that, that's the budget that we agreed on to present. But the benefits are obviously having it in a stadium location versus just kind of a turf field kind of off to the right. You'll have the seating, you'll have the ability for the track meets to use the lights as well, and then it allows also for any sort of things you may want to incorporate into that big open green space that have been talked about previously and considered for the future.
Anything you want to add?
I think questions I'll happily answer.
If you go to the next. This just revisits what we just talked about with the original conceptual referendum budget up to the renter re-estimate, including inflation, and then ultimately the final design is where we're sitting at right now.
So ultimately, as far as the space and where it ended up, we've kind of had that conversation at an earlier design meeting is how we ended up in the middle. He touched on it, but ultimately, the thought of putting that turf like out in the where it was conceptually originally, it would be the turf there. There's the potential there that it would be closer to that estimate, but at that time, we would then have to come back and look at adding a fence around it, adding seating, and adding a press box. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I think those numbers would be, but I feel comfortable from discussions we've had that it would definitely be over $100,000 or more to do those things and kind of figure out how and what we're going to use that space. One of the huge benefits is certainly putting it inside the track. So like, for example, tomorrow night we host the Wisconsin Valley Conference track meet. For that meet, we will be renting 5 diesel powered lights to bring in 4 on the track and 1 over by the discus area. So, I mean, we'll kind of help us with that cost as well. And generally speaking, just be able to use that space for other opportunities. I know there's a lot that goes into turf one way or the other. It's here. It's part of our referendum, so it's not a question whether we're doing it or not. But I think a good testament is kind of this spring. We've been very blessed to have the turf, to be able to get on it. We're really looking forward, obviously, to having the drain tile put in this summer in the outfields. That's been a kind of a little bit of a struggle for us this year. Not having turf on our current soccer field and lacrosse fields, it's been an absolute lifesaver having the turf at Wausau East this spring. At Wausau West, we've only been able to play 2 varsity home soccer games. We've moved 3 of our varsity games over to Wausau East that were able to be played on turf that we wouldn't have been play on our own or look at renting other facilities. So it's been good. We're excited to have this moving forward as well.
A construction question. Most fields, especially when you have a big building like we have at Wausau West, big parking lot, now you have a lot of fields, now you put synthetic turf down, drainage for all of that. I don't see a drainage pond. Most schools will have a drainage pond for that water coming off of rainstorms and all that kind of stuff. There's a place for it to go off to. What is it at West? Is that tied into the city drainage system? Is that going to be? Have they agreed to that?
Correct. It's still a drainable surface. It isn't, you're not adding a parking lot, for example, or a building where you have to accommodate that if you disturb, I believe it's more than an acre. Here, it drained before and it'll drain again. And then there's drainage tile that are put around the perimeter. Right. And then that's tied into the city storm sewer here. Much like the previous field is. It just had to be relocated due to the new field configuration.
And the city already knows the fact that that's going to be tied into their drainage system.
Much like the previous one was as well.
And Ryan, Ryan could certainly speak to this better than I, but I know we've had a pretty significant issue with the drain tile on our other fields that pulls the water to the east. And we've had some issues on our property line with some of our property owners and how there's been, with huge rains, some flooding in the past. We made a conscious effort in this that it actually is draining to the south into a different drainage system and not overloading a system that's probably close to being overloaded already.
Just one other comment, Jason, regarding lights and things like that in the turf. I know I've had the chance to attend a few softball games, and I know the feedback from the kids has been really, really positive, especially the JV. Apparently, when darkness would become an issue, varsity plays first, and then if it got too dark, JV would not be able to play. Now this year, they've been able to play, I think, every game.
Yeah, playability's been awesome. I think a case in point is last Friday, we were actually playing East in a makeup game that got rained out earlier in the year when our outfields are too wet. We sat there, JV game played first, which was great, and then game ended on a home run in the bottom of the 5th inning, and then we had an hour between games, and if anybody remembers last Friday, that hour was not straight downpour, it was going sideways because we had 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts. Normally, that would have probably done our field in, wouldn't have been able to play. We held it out, waited that hour in between games. The umps were there. We were able to jump right on that field and get that second game in underneath the lights. So it was great.
I think kids like the prestige of playing under the lights.
I do too. I would agree with that. So we're looking forward to more opportunities. Yep.
There are a couple alternates that we did build into the project. One is maintenance requested the extension of the water line from the north to the middle of the field for maintenance and cleanability when necessary in the field. And then also in working with Ryan, the topsoil, if there's a space that it can be stored on the site itself for future use by the district versus a contractor removing it, we can weigh those costs, and it will vary by contractor. Some have topsoil to give, some want to take topsoil, so that's why you see kind of a variation of site bids many times, is depending on what the contractor needs or has, but allowing you to keep it here allows you to use it. So you can evaluate that after the fact.
So after discussion, we're requesting for the board to approve the plan design for West High School Athletics Phase 2 as presented to be issued for bidding.
So I'm seeking a motion to approve plan designs for West High School Athletic Phase 2 as presented and issued here, so we can move forward.
So moved.
Second.
Questions? Any follow-up questions to what has taken place? Okay. If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next item, Education Operations Committee meeting, shared 50% update to Horace Mann Middle School in Montessori. As referendum-funded improvement plans develop for each facility, the board will see updates when the designs reach 50% completion. Current plans for Horace Mann Middle School and Montessori will be shared with the board. Do we have anything added to what we had heard earlier? Okay, thank you. Next item, math adoption. At the April Education Operations Committee meeting, Scott Strand shared a presentation on the 9/10 math adoption. I'm seeking a motion to approve the purchase of a core resource from Open Up Resources to support the implementation of Integrated Math 1 and Integrated Math 2.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item, legal expense summary for third quarter. At the April Education Operations Committee meeting, Assistant Superintendent Josh Vergoot presented a summary report presenting all legal counsel expenses incurred during the third quarter of 2023-2024. The report is broken down by law firm and by type of legal advice sought. This is a written report that requires no action, so we can continue to move on. But a refresher course of what had happened. Agenda item 8, new business. EE Governance Board has requested to address the board. And at this time, this is where we're going to have a presentation?
Yep.
Absolutely, that's what I thought. You're in the spotlight.
Yes, I am. Thank you. All right, thank you for having us tonight. My name is Kimberly Zimmerman. I am a teacher at EEA Learning Academy, and we want to make sure that the board fully understands what we do, how we do it, and why we do it, along with what our contract is with the Wausau School District. This is a lengthy presentation. I promise I won't read every word to you. I sent it so that you have every word, and you can take a look at that. Much of what was said, much of what I'm saying, you've heard from our students and our students' parents, as well as graduates. So I think you have an overall understanding of the passion that's felt about EEA Learning Academy. So the reason we're presenting tonight is because the budget shortfall for next year, we understand that has to get balanced some way, but the expectation at this, I don't want to say proposal, it's not a proposal, this is what's happening, is that we will lose 2 of our core advisors, 2 out of 3 advisors within the school, decreasing our classroom staff, our immediate classroom staff by 66%. That's going to really hinder our ability to meet our obligation to the school district, and it's going to result in an unsafe learning environment, both physically and emotionally, for our learners. We have complicated students, and we need to be able to serve them. Here's our agenda. You have it. Like I said, I won't read that to you. Our mission and vision. Our mission is to promote student success by providing a learner-centered education built on the formation of trusting relationships. Our vision, students and families connected to success. On our website, we also have the slogan, a school providing personalized education where everyone is seen, heard, and held accountable. With all of the students in our school in one classroom at one time, or in a classroom with one advisor and in another classroom with a paraprofessional, we cannot see, hear, and hold anybody accountable. We can't do it effectively. Looking a little bit at our history and our historical data, what we have now was started as New Horizons Charter School in the 2005 school year. Started with a very, very small group of middle schoolers, 1 teacher, 1 paraprofessional, 1 AmeriCorps. It goes over the history until the 2010 version of what we have. 2010 forward version of what we had. That was a recombination combining New Horizons with EEA Learning Academy. At that time, we were capped at 80 students, which is 20 students per classroom. Each classroom had one teacher and one paraprofessional or AmeriCorps staff member. EEA is the only Title I secondary school in the Wausau School District. We're funded a little bit differently because of that. And there, of course, is a reason that we're funded a little bit differently because of that. Going back to that, we were at a maximum of 80 students per, within EEA, 20 students per classroom. We are not running at full capacity right now. We're serving about 45 students at a time right now. I want you to understand, I believe passionately that the reason that we serve less isn't because we're no longer needed. I think it's that we're not fully understood. So we're not getting the recommendations to serve the students that we would normally serve. Students are going in different directions. I do believe fully that we can serve students better than what we are, more students every year than what we are. That's what my vision would be. So our current staffing, our principal, she wouldn't truly be, this is Dr. Young, by the way, she's our principal. She isn't truly 0.5 full-time to EEA, but she's shared between EEA and WAVE. We have a school counselor shared at, right now she's at 0.65 full-time. She's shared with Peer and WAVE and EEA. So next year she'll be at 0.4 for EEA. We tell the students to be good on the days that the school counselor's not there, and they don't listen. So we're working on it. We have a school social worker we share with East. We have her as 0.3% or 0.3 full-time, an administrative assistant at 0.5. As you see, we have a whole lot of piecemealed support in there, which means that the advisors are relied on far more heavily for that social emotional piece, filling in on some of those parts where a school counselor or a school social worker, or honestly the administrative assistant would be. A lot more of that responsibility falls on our advisors. In addition, for non-primary classroom staffing, we have a SPED teacher. That's of course based on need. Right now, 25% of our student population receives SPED services, and when you figure it out by the hour, she has 58 hours of service per week. The math isn't mathing there, but there are ways that we work that out with our Title I reading specialist. We have our Title I reading specialist, a full-time. More than 50% of our student population receives direct reading, specialized reading instruction based on their needs and individual levels. And then that's where some of those minutes of service for students with IEPs come in. Our students who need additional reading support, that's facilitated in part through the Title I reading specialist. We also have Jobs for America's graduates. This is not a district-funded position, but there she is. She focuses on post-secondary career and academic preparation for our students. We're big believers that we can get them graduated, but a piece of paper hanging on the wall doesn't do anything. You have to know what to do with that piece of paper. You have to leverage it to get you where you want to be. And then the GED Option 2 coordinator, that's me right now. Within our primary classes, though, that's where the real meat and potatoes happens. That's where our students spend the majority of our day. We're set up almost more like an elementary school where the students spend the majority of their day in their regular classroom. We have 3 advisors. We have Ann Kleiber, she's our lead teacher. She specializes in social studies and holds an alternative ed license. Ramona Winterly has an English license. Jody Marsh is our math teacher, and he also specializes in math interventions. For the majority of our students receive math interventions as well. We have 2 paraprofessionals. Both of them also act as our Leader in Me coaches. That's a district-wide initiative that we have really latched onto, and we're doing great things. You met all of them, right? That was our Lighthouse team that presented to you. They're incredible. We have 2 AmeriCorps members. We're very fortunate to have them, but as you know, AmeriCorps positions are never guaranteed. We're lucky to have 2 right now, but who knows next year. So the roles of the advisors, like I said, that's where the students spend the majority of their day. On the surface, it looks like they facilitate facilitate APEX curriculum. If I didn't know better, I'd say, well, it's online curriculum. What do you really have to do? It's all right there. Yeah, it is. But they're adolescents that are trying to learn this stuff. They're adolescents who have not felt success in a traditional setting. There are many, many gaps in their academic abilities and in their classroom abilities, just to be in the classroom and just to learn independently and learn effectively and efficiently. So the roles within the classroom is to facilitate that APEX curriculum through direct instruction of the parts that they're missing, grading everything. I meant to bring all the books with me tonight so you could see all that grading we do. I forgot. Sorry about that. We're serving grades 6 through 12. Math, science, social studies, language arts, health, financial literacy. We also have gym class and advisory every day. And you want to cut us down by 2 classrooms. We're all very smart people. Holy buckets, to teach all of that effectively to students who haven't felt success in a school. We can't do it. We focus so highly on the social emotional growth. We have very high need students. We work on that academic planning piece with them. The advisors are the ones making sure they have all the right classes, all the right credits in all the right places to get graduated. They're the ones sitting down with them to plan out, map out what they need to get graduated and what they're doing after high school. We cannot do that, though, with limited staff. Discipline, I could slide that right up to the top. It's May and they're getting antsy. There are discipline issues that have to be addressed. We'd be liars if we pretended they weren't. Again, school hasn't been a safe place for many of these students. Not because of any shortcoming of the Wausau School District, but it hasn't been the place that they've felt successful. And if I go into a place repeatedly where I don't feel successful and I don't feel heard or valued, I'm not going to act right either. You're not going to get the best version of me. So that doesn't come out well. We're very, very responsive to student needs on the good side and on the bad side. We address issues as they come up. We come up with new plans for students and with their parents regularly. But again, if we take out 2 classrooms full of staff, we can't do that anymore. IEP meetings, of course, for assigned students, just like any regular ed teacher has, contact with parents, and then again, supervision of PE, supervision of lunch duties, supervision of bus schedules, all of that stuff. It's coming down to the staff members who are left, and there just aren't enough. So again, the students we serve, 6 through 12, right now we have 12 middle school and 32 high school students. We have 5 students shadowing this week alone. So we have multi-aged classrooms, so all the students are working on all their subject areas at the same time. We have to be very, very adaptive, and we have to be staffed to be adaptive. Attendance tends to be a struggle. The data is there. That's why we use APEX in part. As Pete told you, he can miss a day of school, come back and pick up right where he's at. With looking at those behaviors, we serve a large population who have mental health concerns. Depression, anxiety, and trauma are on the rise. We have to be responsive to that. And if the numbers go through the way that they're anticipated to go through, we cannot be responsive. Varied academic skills as well, just teaching students where they're at to get them where they need to be is important to us. This is an overall running of our schedule. You don't need to look at it. I just want you to understand we're a full school. We're doing all of the school with all of the kids all of the time, and we have to be staffed accordingly. I'll let you guys read that at your leisure, but showing this is what our day looks like, hour by hour, day by day, what we're focusing on. So the proposed changes are going to affect EEA. Our advisors will serve, let me take that back, our advisor will be down to 1 advisor, will serve approximately 45 students from 7:35 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon, rather than 15 to 20, how we have been staffed. With each student is in 4 APEX classes at a time, So 4 classes per student times 45 students, that would be 180 classes per semester. Over the course of 8 class periods a day, that would be like having 360 students, if they were, measured out by the period, per day, to meet all their IEP needs, all their behavioral needs, all their social emotional learning needs. With that many students, we're going to have more anxiety, more behaviors, and poorer academic performance. We're also really limited then on potential growth. Now, I understand that services at different schools are changing, potentially next year is what the expectation is. Where are these kids going to go if EEA is full? Because our capacity will have to change based on our staffing. There is nowhere else for them to go, especially grades 6 through 10. So my direct questions to you, we're contracted with the Wausau School District to provide suitable education to students in grades 6 through 12. An important aspect of our school is the low student-to-teacher ratio, especially given research that suggests that students who connect with at least one trusted adult in school are more resilient and have a stronger sense of well-being. If the proposed plan to reduce our staffing by 2 advisors occurs, how would you suggest we focus our efforts? Next, with the substitute shortage, what's the plan to cover the 1 advisor should they be out? We all get sick. Would any of you come to serve 45 students? I wouldn't come to serve 45 students in one classroom all day long. I'm not sure that I would be capable for one day if I knew the students well even. Would any of you be willing to recommend the described learning environment to any friends or families who have adolescents in need of a different learning environment? And I don't know what to do here. I just want to make sure that you understand. And I know that these budget shortages were projected. I know that when things change, the whole reason that there was a referendum to combine schools was based on these numbers. And when that got changed, we're left kind of holding the pot. Well, you have to come up with the money, but at the cost of the students is really concerning to me.
Questions from the board?
I've got a few.
Well, let's start at the end. Go ahead, and we'll go around.
Hi, Kimberly.
Hi, Sarah.
So something that some of you know about me that some of you don't is that most of my educational experience is working with your students. I and my husband co-founded an at-risk public charter school for grades 6 through 12 for highly at-risk kids in Colorado. So when I tell you that I hear you, and I understand your concerns about safety and your concerns about meeting the needs of these students that could potentially fall through the cracks, I do. I have some questions, and I'd like to start. I tried to do math, but my math skills are not mathy enough to do the math on your attendance records information. Yeah. If you could tell us what your average attendance is, say per day, over weeks, things like that. How many students are actually having butts in seats on average?
Boy, that's a number I should have had for you walking in. Sarah, where were you last week while I was writing this up?
Let's see, our yearly attendance percentage, if you could go back to, it's on one of the slides. So this is our attendance factoring in the number of students. Right now, I just did a yearly report to give some of these numbers to Kim.
That does make it look like we have no kids at school, doesn't it? Yeah, no, they're there.
I tried to do the math. I figured out that it's about 21 students at the 90%, 11 students at the 80%. But I don't know what that looks like on a day-to-day, because obviously...
I would say we have a small core group of really, really bad attendance. And then we've got a few with great. I can probably get those exact numbers to you.
I think that would be beneficial for us to have.
I think
maybe
you're right.
Look at a month and say, we had 22 kids in this day, we had 40 kids in this day, we had 17 kids in this day. That would be really helpful for us to have, because while I understand the idea that 45 students to 1 is not an ideal ratio for any teacher anywhere, we also have to look at what the reality is.
I agree.
So that would be one of my questions. Another one of my questions is, just because I've been there, Jane and I had an opportunity to take a tour, and I know that the idea of attendance is something that's at the core of one of your concerns. So my question for the 24-25 school year is kind of twofold. One, what is your projected enrollment right now for that school year? And two, what processes are you looking at putting into place to address the fact that, as you said, it's not being recommended, and it's not, the word is not out there, and also to address the attendance issues with the students that you do have?
So the first, okay, can you repeat the first part of your question again?
Sure. Let's start with projected enrollment for next year.
Projected enrollment. We have 40 students right now in Infinite Campus that have rolled over for the next school year. So there's 40 students in there. We have 5 students who are shadowing this week, and we have a couple others who have already shadowed and just have not fully made the decision yet. So there's a potential for up to, it's 8 to 10 more students beyond like what's in Infinite Campus right now.
Do you know roughly what your percentage is in terms of a turnover from shadow to enrollment?
Not from shadow to enrollment. Again, it's so, it's just, it's just varies so much from student to student and just based on what the family might be looking for or what the needs are. I do know sometimes we do lose some students from where we stand at the very end of the school year and then the beginning of the next year. We often also pick some up in the summer. I still run tours and shadows in the summer as well. August definitely always becomes a time where the last couple weeks before school, there are folks calling, wanting to get in for a tour. That process ends up being a little bit different. Often there's not a shadow then, because we don't have time for it and they need to start somewhere. And then you asked about attendance.
So what sort of processes or plans do you have in place, or would you like to put into place, or are you hoping to put into place to address the attendance issues for current students as well as to increase enrollment for next year?
So in terms of addressing attendance for current students, one of the things that's impacted us some with that is that across Marathon County, we've had some changes in truancy since the pandemic. So that process for truancy court and that whole procedure for that. I guess I could put in a plug right now if anybody is interested in sitting on our local attendance corrections committee. We are be willing to take any of you to join us for some of those meetings. The process has shifted much more out of truancy court and much more at the school level. So we do a lot of meetings with families, we create a lot of plans. I will tell you one of the roadblocks we hit a lot of the time are the mental health needs. And so we may have students then that are bringing in notes signed from either a counselor or a physician indicating, some significant mental health needs. One of the things I think we continue to try to help folks focus on right now is envisioning it like a somewhat new graphic this year that envisions the student in the middle of like a piece of pie. And there's all these different pieces of pie. As a school, one of our jobs is to make sure you have all the other supports that you need. But at the end of the day, our job is school. And so we are always going to bring every conversation back to school. That doesn't mean we're discounting the whole child, because we're taking that into account, but we are not the therapeutic setting that one might find in a counseling office. We offer some great supports, but we really want to continue to push that we're the school piece of the pie, so we always have to bring the conversation back to school. So we're continuing to follow the truancy process and procedure. Again, I think it's come through as a county into a more refined new process now. And we're just continuing to follow that process. So some students end up with some additional supports. Some end up actually in truancy court. I think now that process is more stabilized again, I would envision us probably having more kids in truancy court next year if these patterns continue.
I'd like to add to that too. Those students with percentages below 80%, it doesn't mean they're not in the building. Oh. They're in the bathroom or they're asleep. They're more work than the ones that are, the butts and seats are the easy ones, really, a lot of the time. The ones that aren't in the building, it's not that they're just not showing up. Boy, oh boy, they're showing up, but they're showing up and they're hiding out for whatever reason. They're showing up and they're going to sleep. We have online curriculum. If you're not even logging into your class, it's like you're out wandering in the hallway. You're marked absent because you're not there engaging in what you need to be engaging in. You're out where you're not supposed to be instead. So that attendance rate isn't accurate to the number of students we're serving at that moment.
Physically, right.
So just that last bit then, which is what is EEA doing? What is the governance board doing? What are the students doing, the Lighthouse team doing to increase recruitment?
A lot of it is informing people of who we are and who we aren't. We get recommendations. We've done a great job of getting more recommendations, but the misconceptions are still there. We had a student come over the other day for a tour. His family was convinced we were a project-based learning school. That school went out 5 years ago. The family was told by a school district employee that we were essentially EGL because we were in the space that EGL once had. We've had students come right from central office here, students of whose parents work at central office, and say, well, isn't this just a school for naughty students? I think we're all the schools for naughty students right now. There's naughty students. We're the students that are serving the ones that are struggling to be served in other places in the district. You met a lot of our kids tonight. We have great kids. But that public perception of who we are and who we serve is hindering who we serve.
That's a good point.
Thank you. We're advocating to be listed along with, so the paperwork that goes home with 5th graders going into 6th, as well as 8th graders going into 9th. All that paperwork that says, so this is the next school you're going to, it needs to say more than just Horace Mann and John Muir, or more than East or West. The taxpayers are paying for us. We need to be advertised in the same way. The families, we owe it to the families to know what all of the options are.
We're also working with Diana White right now as a group of charter schools, EEA, WAVE, Montessori, and obviously I know Red Granite is starting, but those of us who are have been part of the district for a while, we're working with Diana White to put some more materials out that include all 3 of those charter schools, and then of course obviously would include Red Granite as well. But just to help folks in the district understand the many options that the school district provides. And we think more efforts for us to join together as charter schools is going to be helpful to allow parents to see the different choices they have. We have, those are 3 very different schools. And now being the principal of WAVE as well as EEA, there's some similarities, there's some overlap. But there's also some differences as well. We just participated this past weekend at the Children's Festival, Montessori, EEA, and WAVE together, joined together to have a booth there providing an activity for kids as they came through. Just trying to increase the visibility more and make sure that families know that the Wausau School District has a lot of different options, but to make sure that they are really put out there. Diana White and I have a meeting not quite completely on the calendar yet, but looking at the first week of June so we can further plan some of these different things and try to figure out. I do know one piece that we would love to get in place is something that we do for initially all district staff and then new staff as they come on, because even the staff in the district don't understand what we do. Some don't know we exist, and that stands, I think, for all of the charter schools. I think sometimes when you do something different, part of that is just often there's some misunderstanding as part of that process.
I hit it on the head, specifically in the fact that advertising is very important of the different offerings that we have here in our district. Any other questions? We'll move on.
I might have more, but I'm good now.
John?
You took a lot, sir, very good questions. A lot of the questions I had, so I won't belabor the point, but just I do appreciate and see the need. Not all students learn the same way, so the fact that we have these sorts of charter schools and different options is certainly something I think that we should embrace. And although we're working through some difficult budgetary things right now, hopefully we can come together and figure out how to continue to keep as many options on the table as possible, just because I know all students don't learn the same way. I have 4 children of my own, and none of them learn the same way, so.
Can I add something? I want, when you said that not all the students learn the same way, I really want to make sure that everybody understands what we are teaching the students at EEA. Many believe that our curriculum is less than. I wish it was. Our jobs would be so much easier. I don't wish it was because of, lower standards, but our students do everything.
And they have to get an 80% to go on to the next thing.
I'm just going to say, you have to have the scores as well as everybody else.
Mastery-based learning, so they don't get to move forward until they demonstrate mastery on the skill that they have. Which is very frustrating to some of them, of course, which leads to behavioral issues. New students, of course, it's always kind of a cycle until we get them into that where you can be successful at school. Just stop, slow down, you can be successful, you can do this. We don't lower our standards for our kids. If they do, when they do a class, they've done every single assignment in it. They don't get to this time of the year and say, what's the bare minimum I need to do to earn that credit? Bare minimum is every assignment you have in it. The books, I apologize, I was supposed to bring the books with me and I left them behind. But they've got books this thick for each class of every worksheet they have to do, every quiz and every test that they have to take then follows all of that. Apex is designed for AP learning. These aren't easy classes. So we're taking unsuccessful students, putting them in high-level classes and helping them succeed, showing them they can do it.
I don't have anything additional right now.
Sure, thank you. Just a statement, then I've got just a couple of quick questions. First of all, and I think this is probably stating the obvious, but I'm going to say it anyways, that I'm very confident saying everybody in this room wants what's best for kids. And the purpose sometimes of decisions that are made, such as we did with the budget, a few weeks ago, they aren't made for the reason of driving anxiety and stress into current students, current parents, current staff. Sometimes they can be made to drive meaningful discussion, which I think is exactly what's happened here tonight. And frankly, how I think the process should work. Now, having said that, one of the questions that I have is, right now you have the 3.8, it's called 4 FTEs in the non-primary setting, and you have the 3 FTE advisors, 2 paras, 2 AmeriCorps for a total of 11.
I bet your math is right on that.
I don't know if I'd get 80% success. Writing numbers down quickly here, but anyways, so and that covers the current 40-ish students.
In different capacities.
Correct, but that's generally you have this many staff and this many students. Shannon, I was not able to find what was the staffing when we were at 80 students.
We had 4 advisors. And we paired each advisor with a paraprofessional or an AmeriCorps staff member. We essentially had 4 advisors and 3 paraprofessionals through the district. And then we would fill that other classroom pair, round that other classroom pair out with an AmeriCorps staff.
You had double the enrollment with 2 additional staff. You had 1 more advisor, 1 more para.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if I missed this part in any of the presentations, my apologies. What are you guys asking for? What would you like? What do you need? I understand 11 is what you want. Everybody wants to stay status quo. What do you need to have a chance to be successful?
We need at least 1 more certified, at least one of our advisors. That would be to be able to serve the students that we have and those that at this point would be proposed to be coming in. I would see if we continue to grow next year. I will tell you, living through it before with waiting lists and that sort of thing, one of the toughest things to do is to have a family come to you and you don't have any room for them. You're like, we're sorry, there isn't anything. So I would say at least one of those advisor positions added back, and then a plan for at what number do we get to add the 3rd back? Like we've had 3. A plan that sort of lays out, you need, this is what you can have right now, and then if numbers reach this amount, then we'll bring that other person back in. So, a plan. really.
That
We want to,
seems fair.
the governance board wants to, we have a contract with the school board. We served the district for 19 years. We want to be able to continue to do that, but if we're down to one advisor, something is going to have to go. And that would be where we would need from, you're our authorizer. So then what do we cut? Do you want us to cut out middle school? Do you want us to cut, like, what do we cut? Because we have juniors and seniors, you know,
Right.
incoming for next year that they've committed to getting their diploma from
And
EEA.
that's actually a good segue into my next question, and this is maybe more for administration, but about 80% of your staff, 80% of your students are high school students.
Yes.
The numbers that I came up with last year during the restructuring conversations were about, we average at East and West, about one certified staff member, so I call one teacher for about 13 students. So if we use that ratio and applied it here, you guys would have 3 advisors. So my question is, why do we think that the need, and need is the wrong word, but why do we think that we can be successful here with 1 when we would know we would need 3, let's say, in a traditional high school setting?
So, yeah, we, the ratio that you're talking about also includes pupil services staff, right? So, I wonder, Tabitha, you've got some ratios and maybe some more expertise. Would you mind coming up to speak to that? It's a good question.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
You bet.
So when we run our student to staff ratios for all of our buildings, we factor in 3 main core areas of our staff. We factor in all classroom teachers, and that's all. So whether it's GT, it's a classroom teacher, it's Encore, all of those areas. So teachers are one category, special education staff is another, and then pupil services staff is the third. And pupil services staff would include psych, social worker, counselor. Special ed includes special ed, like classroom teachers, as well as speech and language pathologists. So I've got the numbers for all, I'll say 5 secondary schools. I didn't include WAVE, that's a whole different kind of staffing model. Currently, right now, EEA is sitting with a student staff ratio with, like, as we project to next year, it would be a student staff ratio using those numbers of 9.41 students per staff member. And our 2 middle schools are sitting at, Man has 8.98 students per staff member, and Muir is sitting with 10.3 students per staff member. When we go to the 2 high schools, Pat, you had a perfect recollection. East is sitting at 13.58 students per staff member, and West is sitting at 14.46. So those are all of our projected student to staff ratio numbers, and that's using basically an apples to apples comparison in each of those locations. EEA does have a projected number right now of 40, and currently they're sitting with 44 in their enrollment, in their currently enrolled student count. The only other thing that I would mention that I think might be relevant to the conversation and to your question about those ratios is when we are looking at student enrollments, we're always getting those updates. I get those updates on the hourly basis almost as they shift and change for all of our buildings. When those numbers start to creep up in any of our spaces based on either grade levels or individual classrooms or overall numbers, like let's say math, at any of our secondary schools, those principals reach out to me. They let me know what those numbers are. We take a look at that. There's a conversation with several administrators involved.
Sure.
And at some point, we decide to add more back if we need to.
Okay. So then, what is the budget plan, the staffing plan for EEA next year then? How many FTEs?
So we have teacher FTE 2. There's a math certified teacher as well as the Title I English certified person. There's 1.2 in our special ed area, and there's a total of 1.05 of pupil services FTE in the pupil services staffing plan. So that's a total of 4.25. I think our pupil services went down to 4.3. According to the document that I have that was in my office that I double checked today, it is 1.05 for those three areas combined. So if it changed, people didn't tell me. I'm giving you the numbers that I have officially on the books. It's based on what the board is going to approve for contracts tonight. So
4 FTEs going forward, and today it's the 11-ish.
But I think
Am I
the
tracking?
11 includes JAG.
right. So in addition, so what I have talked about is our certified staff. They would also, in addition to that, still maintain one paraeducator. We do not factor in AmeriCorps. We do not factor in JITO 2. We do not factor in JAG. So those 3 staff members or mix of those staff members are above and beyond what I've shared in terms of numbers. And the principal and the admin assistant would also not be factored in to the numbers that I gave you.
Okay, so the real net reduction, if I have my numbers halfway close, is going to be 1 para and the 2 advisors.
Correct. All of which still maintain employment by being reassigned to other locations.
Yeah. That's a separate.
That's a different,
piece.
that's a, yeah.
And with that 1 teacher at EEA, how will you cover the licensing requirements across the disciplines?
It's something that we'll have to check into, because we need to make sure that we have that teacher of record in all those content areas. So one option is to look at the alternative education. There's some paperwork that you can file, that we can file with the state, and then if the person has an alternative education license, then that would cover us. But it's still a piece we have to check into, because there's also some, when you make that designation, there's a reason that we haven't done it in the past, went ahead and made that designation. So it's a piece we can look into. I had reached out last year in like April or May, because I think at one point we were talking about whether or not there was the possibility for some reduction. So I reached out to the Wisconsin Resource Center for Charter Schools to ask, like, are we required to? The answer was yes, you are required to have, some subject.
But if that was on past tense, things have changed at DPI. And
There's-
things are changing.
There's quite a
almost
bit of
monthly.
flexibility
Yeah, there's a
and
lot of
alternative
flexibility there
pathways.
for you. At least help.
So there may be some things that, and I have some messages out to the Wisconsin Resource Center for Charter Schools. The person I talked to last year is no longer there, so they connected me with the person who was there this year, but I have not.
Well, there comes a point, and aside from the licensing thing, I mean, this decision at this level, after going through all of these numbers, listening to everybody, I think what we have to understand, what everybody needs to understand, is that going to this level is going, in my opinion, is going to be a death blow to the school. I don't think it's going to be sustainable. So if we're going to continue with this, we have to factor in, and I'm not saying this to be dramatic, but we have to factor in those 40 kids going back into traditional school settings, right? Which the needs don't go away. The needs are still there. Yet now we're going to have to find a way to service those needs with processes that are not necessarily as efficient for that same population. And I don't know how to put a number on efficiency. This was my day job. I could have it in a second, but I know one thing I've learned being a parent and on the school board is kids are not widgets, and each one is different. So
that was a big learning thing right there.
It is a big learning thing, but I mean, that's really
All different.
where my head is at. This is a this is going to be a death blow. If we go forward with this, we have to make plans in the future for reacclimating everybody back into a traditional school setting.
I think you'll have to make those plans faster than you think, because I've already heard from students, well, if this is what next year is going to look like, I'm going to East, I'm going to West. It's like, oh brother, yeah. We're going to hit that point of like critical mass, but the opposite side of that, whatever it is, when you get too small.
This is no different than anything, frankly, that I do during a day job. If you cut a department, if you cut something so low, it just becomes, you can't deliver on your value proposition, and your customers go away, which is exactly what you just described. And I want to preface this by saying, this is not the fault of anybody in this room. This is not the fault of anyone trying to do, detrimental things. I encourage people to go read an article that was out on one of the news feeds talking about the Esser Cliff when it comes to school staffing. There's cities, Arlington, Texas is losing 400 staff members, Hartford, Connecticut, 200. I mean, this is real. And fortunately, we've had some very eloquent speakers tonight bring that reality, at least for me, much closer to home and give me a better understanding. So.
And I would just respectfully ask if that is the direction of decisions, then let's have the right conversations. I was part of EGL for some of its years, not at the very end, but I know that there was a process. And of course, I spent 19 years of my career at EEA. I believe in the service that it provides. And again, as you said, I don't believe all of us here in this room are just trying to do our jobs and we're trying to serve kids well. None of this is personal. It's personal for the kids. It's personal for what we want to do and how we want to serve them. But I would ask, if the plan is to phase EEA out, then let's do it right and let's be honest about it. And let's lay out what that looks like. Again, I don't think that EEA is unneeded. I think it's underutilized right now. We experienced some changes from the pandemic as well. I'm definitely seeing, this semester, I've seen such an uptick in interest and enrollments. It's constant. I can't provide enough tours. We're scheduling tours for families, and I'm asking, having 7 kids come in on one of those after school. I have to ask staff to stay for those because we give each family some individual attention. But as you said, if this is what's, I think death blow was the word, if that's what's going to happen, these kids deserve for us to do that right and to have a plan.
Rather than
we're going to run through this many more years, and you can be guaranteed that you can graduate from here and you can be, and again, that's not what I want to see. But if that is in a plan anywhere.
We don't know that right now. Okay, I want to get more questions in.
Yeah, that's fine. My last comment is going to be simply, I don't believe for a second that the need has dropped by 50%. Okay, so part of that is on you guys to deliver your value proposition, and part of that is on the rest of the administrators in the schools that should be feeding you guys. That seems to have dried up. And to me, that's a much more important conversation that we have to have, because I think that's been overlooked in this entire process.
We're going to jump over here. Go ahead, Jane.
Okay. I have a few questions. Did you mention the percentage of students that have IEPs and 504 plans?
We put the 25% with IEPs. Did not give the 504 number, but that's another good number. We certainly could get that for you.
We could get that, and we serve students so individually that there are some that in a traditional setting would definitely be seeking 504s, and in EEA it's like, this is what you need? Oh, okay, this is what we'll do then.
Yeah.
It's not as formal as it should be.
And then I'm worried about the Title I. Are we going to not meet the requirement? Are we going to lose our Title I funding? Isn't that dependent on ratio?
Yeah, it's ratio driven. I'm assuming that the poverty levels would remain. Sorry.
We still have the the number and the poverty levels of students, we have 40 kids enrolled, it's the ratio of those 40 students.
Okay.
My understanding is that and I verified this with Katie Colwell, that designation is still there, and that is a large part of the reason why the 1.0 Title I teacher is remaining as a staff member as part of the programming.
Okay.
Jane, were you thinking of AGR ratio? AGR is the one that
Yeah.
has the student to teacher ratio
know.
one. Yeah.
But I thought
not
Title I also had something to do with that, but I think there are some things we need to do. I think we need to hear maybe from Mr. Bushman what his plans are for EEA. I think we need to do a much better job with PR. And I think you're right about the move from 5th to 6th and 8th to 9th. We absolutely have to put that on the papers that go home. These are the options. I think we need to do that more in general. And as far as the kids being in the building and being marked absent, we heard from a young woman who was raising her sisters, working a part-time job. Sometimes they're just exhausted from whatever life is happening to them at home.
And I promise you that we are responsive.
Oh, I absolutely believe you.
I promise you we're not like, oh, you have a really hard life right now and you're up all night with a kid. Cut. No, we're not doing that.
No, I understand that, but just for the general public and the rest of the board, sometimes it's an escape mechanism. Their anxiety is here, and falling asleep sometimes is the way that they deal with it.
Avoiding the thoughts.
Thanks.
Joanna?
Thank you for taking the time out to come and speak to us. These are very hard decisions that we have to make, and we're having to make them all across the board. And I understand the need, and I see the need across all our schools. When I heard you speak about the misconception that people have, I think working with our marketing, Diana White, and working with the schools so they know that you are that resource that's there and educating us, the public, on what you offer. I was just thinking maybe showing a day in the life, something like that on Facebook or on Instagram. Kids and parents are on social media, and that could kind of help out. But working with our marketing department, and I think working with our schools, could help that enrollment out. Coming from the inner city, I know what it's like to see people fall through those cracks. I've seen it. I've grown up with people, so I've seen it. And I do think that there is a need for the school and what you offer. When I see the enrollment, that's what we're looking at. And unfortunately, these are the hard decisions that we have to make now, because the can has been kicked down the road, and now we have to make these decisions, and they are hard. It's hard for me to make these decisions. I'm very emotional when I hear kids speak, because I've gone through many of the things that they've gone through. But thank you for taking the time out to speak to us, and I hope that we can work something to be able to keep the school alive and thriving. Thank you.
Yeah, so a concern that there's lots of concerns, but everybody else has already covered them. But a concern that I have is, and you mentioned that you're worried that some students won't want to enroll next year, and I think we never should have gotten to this point. There should be 80 students there now. But one of the reasons I share the concern that people won't enroll there next year is because there is a misconception, and the reason I think there's this misconception is because it's what people have been telling us. Some of the speakers tonight told us, and many of the people who have contacted me have told me that they think that next year there's going to be one room with 45 students in it, one teacher, one para, that's it. But now I'm learning tonight, and this doesn't allay all my concerns, but I'm learning tonight, but there's still also going to be a full-time special ed teacher, still also going to be a full-time reading teacher, and going to be 0.7 of counselor and social worker. And I know that that isn't enough. You want more than that. But I think unless I'm wrong, I think it's important for people to understand that there's not going to be 45 students with one teacher, one para, that's it. There's also two other or am I not right? Because you had a full-time special ed teacher listed, a full-time reading specialist listed, so now we've got four.
So yes, but the special ed teacher, most of her minutes in the day are spent individual, like serving the needs of the individual IEPs. So if this one has, a 20-minute check-in and this one has 30 minutes of, working with her on math and things like that, a lot of her time is with little onesie-twosies at a time. So if you have 45 kids in a classroom and 2 of them are with the SPED teacher, or 3 of them are with the SPED teacher, you've still essentially got 45 kids. It's a few less, of course. The reading interventionist, our reading interventions are run almost like an elementary reading intervention class where you've got a group of 4 or 5 kids at a time. We're working on those same skills at that same reading level. So you're pulling out 4 or 5 kids at a time based on their individual needs, and then doing the one-on-one progress monitoring with them regularly throughout the week to make sure that they're gaining the skills and going in the direction that needs to be.
Yeah, I understand that, but what I'm saying is the people that are contacting me don't understand that. The people that are contacting me think, because they're contacting me and they're freaking out, saying, there's gonna be 45 kids in the room and all we have now is 1 teacher and 1 para, compared to what we used to have. And I didn't know enough at the time to respond back and say, but there's still going to be a full-time special ed teacher. There's still going to be a full-time reading teacher. So you're still talking about, 4 full-time employees for those students. I understand they're not all exactly taking 5 each to equal it out, but I just think it doesn't mean that there aren't needs that are going unmet. But I think it's important for people out there to understand what the room's really going to look like, because right now they think it's 45 students, two people, no one else, no other supports.
There is a piece from their perspective that's accurate. So they have the students that are in the room right now, about 15, and those 2 staff members. So they're knowing that classroom staff is anticipated to go to 1 and 1. And so right now they're seeing 3 different rooms with 2, 2, and 2, because we utilize an AmeriCorps staff member in one of them right now. So their daily world of doing their work, handing it in, getting it checked, okay, I'll unlock the quiz for you, or nope, you're not quite ready for the quiz yet, go back and make the corrections I told you to make. And then, there's that back and forth, or I'm not understanding this right now. In their world, that's the piece. It's that classroom piece. So in essence, even though we have that special ed teacher and we have the Title I reading teacher, they have very specialized roles. The classroom teacher is the one that's responsible on the day-to-day of managing what at this point then is 7 grades, 4 core subjects for each grade, and they're constantly, it's very interdisciplinary, they're constantly getting in that work, checking the work, handing it back, unlocking the quiz. This one didn't pass the quiz. What else do they need to do now? So it's this constant flow across all 7 of those grades. And so when the kids are saying that, that's their world most of the time, unless they have an IEP and they meet with the IEP teacher, or for that short period of time in the day, the 45 minutes that they may spend with the Title I teacher, their world is what's happening in that classroom. And so they would know that for that the majority of their core curriculum stuff, it's going to be 1 certified teacher and 1 paraprofessional providing all of that interaction and trying to get all of that support to, the 40 kids or 45 or whatever.
Yeah, and maybe I didn't do a good enough job of it. I understand that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not suggesting that doesn't present a challenge. What I'm telling you, for whatever it's worth, the people that are contacting me are describing it to me as we're going from like 9 to 2. Mm-hmm. Because they've heard all we're going to have is 2 people next year. Mm-hmm. And so they're thinking, and I'm not saying that applies to everybody here, but literally people are calling me and talking to me and describing it as we're going down to just 2 people that are going to serve all 40 students. Mm-hmm. When before it was, was it 10 or 11 FTE or whatever it is you total up. And so, no comment on whether that's good or bad, but it's not from 11 to 2.
Right.
Okay. So I just think it's important for people to know that, so that they still should have concerns, but not think that it's going to be 2 adults.
Kale, did you have something to add? Because you came and joined the party here.
That was from James' question.
Yeah, I did. First, I just want to give a shout out to the kids that spoke tonight. It takes a lot of courage to be up in front and so I applaud you guys for that. I think EEA, it's a benefit to the district, right? We have a program for kids that fits a niche that they need, and I think we need to encourage that. Where we're struggling right now is just the ratios and the numbers and the cuts that we have to make. Those are the challenges that we have. I sure hope it's not the death sentence. I understand and appreciate that side of it, but I think from a district perspective, what we really need to talk about is operationalizing growth. And what does growth look like for EEA? And what is our marketing plan for EEA? How do we get out to the community? How do we get out to the schools to grow those numbers? And just like elective courses at the high school, when we have a greater surge in numbers, we respond with staff to that area because their kids want, and we should respond to those needs. So I guess my 2 cents would be, how do we operationalize that, and how do we look to say, here are the numbers that trigger additional staff? Is it a support staff? Is it a teaching staff? And what does that look like, so that 5 years from now we have a robust program that we're serving 80 kids inside the program?
I'm going to summarize because we need to move on as well. And I don't want to cut this off because I'm very passionate about a program like this. I started one up north. I was involved with one in a much bigger district in Wausau, in Minneapolis, St. Paul area. So I understand those needs of students, and differentiation of learning takes place. And I understand I'm still subbing. So I'm in the classroom with sometimes students that I always call them at different times reluctant learners. And so consequently, I understand that. But this is, I think a big part of it is we haven't gotten all the information. We haven't, as Lance just stated, I think people have gotten a little bit of this and a little bit of that and not understanding. I understand numbers where you'd want to grow this back, because when you're dealing with IEPs, 504s, you're dealing with all the different things that go along with learning, you need specialists, and you need to have those people coming in and that. And so everything is not basically everything on a ratio. It can't be that. So we need to hear this. We needed to hear this. We need to have the students and people knowing we're not out to cut this. You have too many people here empathetic and very passionate about students learning at all levels, because that's where students are, at all levels, and we need to reach every one of them to get to them so that we can get them where they need to be later on. And as they can see that, they will understand that, and then we will have been successful. So with that, I thank you for coming. I appreciate that greatly personally, and I think the board has shown that with the questions that they have had and you have answered, and hopefully we can get some more information. PR, I think is very important for all of our charter schools. I just want to finish up on that one. I think that is a big part that we need to start looking at a little bit more closely, and let people know in our community what we have here at Wausau. We have a lot of special things for a lot of special students, and we need to make sure a lot of people know that, and I don't think that's happening sometimes. So it's going to be something we push for in the future. So thank you very much for being here and showing what you have.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for your time and attention.
You bet. Next item on the agenda, transportation. Mr. Vergoot and Pat Starkin will present an RFP, next steps for the district transportation contract. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you so much. So we are at the point where we need to go out to RFP for our transportation partner. For the last number of years, we've been with First Student. It's been a good partnership, but our contract ends after the 24-25 school year. So we're looking at going out to RFP in the coming months. And Pat Starkin is here to talk to us a little bit tonight. He's a former transportation director at Racine Unified School District, worked for Edgelog for 5 years. Edgelog is a software that's used by transportation companies throughout the nation. He's written 17 RFPs for districts within the state and nationwide, including our last RFP here in the Wausau School District. So we've been working together the last couple months on updating the RFP. we think it's in a good place to move forward. So that's what we're asking you for permission for tonight. A little more background. Stop me anytime you have questions, but I'm just going to fly through this. Our current transportation partners, for student, we have more than 200 routes per day, average 170 field trips per month. As I mentioned, we're going out for a new RFP. Our most recent was in 2019. Approximate transportation costs are about $3.1 million. Any questions on any of that background information? Okay. So I will turn it over to Mr. Sarkin to walk a little bit through the process.
Thank you. So part of the RFP, when we set it up, it's set up by doing runs and routes for the cost. It ends up making it really easy to compare one contract or one bid to another. A unique thing with Wausau is the fuel's paid directly by the school district, which makes it a very clean RFP. Making sure that you have a good relationship with your current vendor, which we currently do, is a plus. They also understand that it's a responsibility of the school district to go out for a request for proposal after their contract is up. We plan on sending this out to 8 different vendors to try to get a wide variety in here so that we get a good number for the school district. And that we're sending it out, the bid is going out. The bid doesn't actually start until July 2025, which we have a long time. If we select a different vendor, that they would be able to get all the operations in place. Thanks. So we're going to open up the bid in May and June. So it'll give them about 7 or 8 weeks to compile all the information that they need so that they can give us a decent bid. We're looking at interviewing probably the top 3 of the bidders with a committee meant of stakeholders in the district, made up of primarily the ADs as well as elementary principals. And then we'll do actual in-person interviews with those people with the committee. The finalists will be recommended and brought to the school board in the October meeting this year. And the transportation service will begin in July 2025.
I guess I'd like to open it up for questions from the board.
Let me start to my right. Kate, do you have any questions?
I know over the years with our current situation that we've got cameras on buses, and is that something that will go out as a requirement for anybody that?
Yeah. So we had that in the last RFP that we sent out, and yes, absolutely, the cameras are just absolutely important to have on the buses. They will absolutely be there.
Okay, thank you.
Fantastic.
Do you have any experience in districts in the RFP process or in the contract process having some sort of guarantee where the vendor actually has to uphold their end of the contract and is penalized, frankly, in some way if routes aren't? If a route doesn't happen, let's just put it as simple as possible. If a route doesn't happen, that we pay less because they failed to carry a route that day.
That's a really good question. So in the contract, there is what we call liquid damages. And so if they don't run a route or there's a continual problem, we can apply liquid damages to the vendor, and they're required to pay them to us. You have to be careful with liquid damages because the very first question when this RFP is going to get sent out after it's approved by the board, the very first question every vendor is going to ask is, what are your liquid damages that were assessed to the vendor over the last 5 years? Fortunately for us, we can say 0. We can say 0 because the first thing that they do is they take, if we would have said $50,000 or we would have said $100,000, the first thing they do is they put that in their model and you end up paying for it anyway. So you have to be careful with it, but you can use that if you need to, and it is in the contract to use. Most of the time what happens with the district is if the route is not run, we don't get billed for it. That is not a liquid damage. We just don't get charged for it.
Okay. Because the concern I have is we sign a 4 or 5 year contract, and if the market turns in a way that favors the bus company, job market turns, you can hire employees for less than what you thought you were going to 3 years earlier, they don't give us any money back. But if the job market goes the other way and they're struggling to hire bus drivers and they would have to maybe double their pay to fill all their bus roles, they don't. And we're left with bus routes not completed. And so it's important to me that if we're going to have a contract, that it's a contract that goes both ways. That if we're going to be expected to pay the whole time, then I want it to be fulfilled.
Well, it is supply and demand. It is supply and demand. And over the last 10 years, nationwide, we've had a bus driver shortage. And primarily, the best way to get additional drivers is to increase the driver's pay. And that has happened here.
Right, and what I'm saying is, when you set the contract, both sides are predicting what they think bus driver pay is going to be for the next 5 years. And what I'm saying is, if the bus companies, if things go well for them and bus driver pay actually doesn't go up as much as they predicted, they don't give us that money back. But if the bus driver pay goes up way more than predicted, they leave us with routes not filled.
So when we send out the RFP, we'll let them know what the bus drivers are currently getting paid. And what will happen over the next few years is you never reduce their pay. So they may not increase it as much, but they won't ever. If now I can get a bus driver for $17 an hour and I'm paying them $21, they're not going to tell the drivers, I'm going to pay you $20 and I'm going to pay you $17. That'll never happen.
Yeah. Well,
you're not going to tell a teacher that, okay,
no, I don't
we have
want
a lot of teachers, so
I don't
now
want
we're
to
going
beat
to pay
the
them
horse.
less.
But so let's say they predict. So let's say our bus drivers are getting paid 21.
Yes.
And as they're calculating what they think this is going to cost them, they think that they're going to have to be paid 23 the next year and 26 the year after that. And they're not telling us that, but that's they're figuring out.
Absolutely,
Right?
they're going to look at cost.
But
of
if they're
living.
wrong, in a good way for them, and they don't actually have to increase pay at all, they're not going to give us any of that money back off of what we agreed to pay them for 5 years. So what I'm saying is, when it goes bad for them and they have to pay more than planned, I want them to pay more than planned, not leave us routes short.
Every vendor will give us the same amount of bids, and they're all going to increase it with the cost of living and a planned cost of living over the next 5 years.
Okay, well, I guess we'll see what the contracts look like when we get to that point. But
I understand what you're saying.
yeah.
Just one question. I don't even know if this is appropriate with this type of an RFP, but have you ever done what I do sometimes with other vendors is a right of first refusal for the incumbent, where if we think that the increase is going to be between 1 and 5%, I'm making this up, then we would go to the incumbent and say, hey, if you will renew us at a 3% increase, we're not going to go to RFP.
That would be the choice of the school board. And in many cases, when you're talking a contract this large, it's required by school boards. I'm not exactly sure what your regulations say or your articles of incorporation, how the board is set up. But this one last year was actually added to the contract because of COVID and things like that went on. So there was an extension to the current contract that was written, and the school board did approve a 1-year extension. Can you do that? And could we go to the vendor and say, would you be interested in doing a 3% increase? We could. That would have to come from you. That would not be coming from this side of the table. But if you would like us to try to negotiate something like that with a direction, we could attempt to do something.
I'm saying sometimes you can create a win-win.
Absolutely, I totally get it, and our vendors would like that. Our vendors would like that.
Right.
I don't know where we are with the district on the rules and complete regulations of what's required.
I haven't thought through it enough to even know if it's a good idea.
My former school district would not allow that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Just a quick, our policies would allow that if the board were interested in that process.
I was going to say, if our policy probably has that.
Yep.
We're not required. Isn't this over the dollar amount that's required for RFP?
It is, we have a dollar amount for construction.
Construction, this is different because it's,
we'd have to have either a bid, right, or a negotiation. But certainly the board can, go any direction you want to on this. So that would be an option.
When we take a look at the contracts, I would assume that we could be making a decision then.
Yes, well, we'd go through the whole process then, but yeah,
Right.
we'd have those not to.
Well, you can't go to your vendor though and say, would you be interested in extending for 3% if we get a bunch of bids in that are 8%? Well, I mean, you can, but I know what I'd say if I was the vendor.
It would have to.
No.
It'd have to
Right.
be before we go.
It'd have to be before
Yeah,
that.
it would have to be before we would go
Yeah.
for an RFP.
Yeah.
There'd be a rider at the end,
Yeah.
isn't that called?
I think that's something we need to consider. Because there's got to be, there's a cost for starting up, getting the buses here, hiring, and when something's already in place and it's been working, I think it's something the board needs to consider.
Could you share some pros and cons to doing that? Maybe that you've seen with other districts?
The pros would be, you know what you get. You know what you're getting by far. There's a system in place. I know that they struggled a year ago with runs. I also know that they've done extremely a much better job this year. When you go out for an RFP, there's a sense of unexpected that you don't and unknown. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not as good. You can expect, no matter what company that you get, that 80%, 90% of the bus drivers are probably going to be the same drivers. The name on the side of the bus is going to change, and your terminal manager may or may not change. Your terminal manager really makes or breaks your operation. And if you have a good relationship, which you do right now with your terminal manager, it probably be in your best interest to consider something like that. And if you could avoid going out for an RFP, generally you'll probably, I'm going to go out on a line on this, probably save a little bit of money. I believe that.
Well, you're absolutely right. The manager does manage
Yes, sir.
a big project.
Yes.
And it is very important. Go
So-
ahead, Sarah.
I just want to make sure because what Pat said and what's being talked about are slightly different things. Because what Pat said was a right of first refusal where we do go for an RFP, giving our current vendor the right to going to them afterwards and saying, if I'm understanding, and please correct me because it's not my day job, but if we get RFPs back that are, say, a percentage increase from 3 to 8%, and we go then to first student and say, would you be willing to do it for 5? Because then we're just going to stick with you.
Kind of.
Okay.
Except you do that with first student before the RFP goes out.
Okay.
Josh sits down.
So we make our
Josh and
best
Pat,
guess at what that percentage
They sit down
would
with
be.
first student and say, hey, we're interested in a 5-year contract extension. What could you do? What would you be interested in doing that? What does that look like? They bring it back to us and we say, oh, okay, that's palatable or not. If we say no and we go to full RFP, that's where the risk comes in because then we don't know what we're going to get from the other 7 vendors. So that's where the risk mitigation strategy comes into play.
And we do have some time in our current time frame. So if it's something the board was interested in, we could certainly look at that.
One of the things that Wausau has done over time, even the last time that I was here and helping out with the RFP, is this isn't due for an entire calendar year. So if this was something that you were interested in, that would be something that'd be important to talk to Josh about so that he could contact the vendor. And if the numbers and that, you give him a time frame, give me 3 weeks or next board meeting, can you report back to us? And then whether you like that or not, then we could go out for an RFP at that time. That would be something that would be a decision of the board and Josh and you guys.
Because there are, Jane's right, when things are going good, it's one thing, but there's also all of the implementation costs are going to be baked into that contract regardless.
Correct.
So it's going to save and it's going to behoove everyone best interest if we don't have to pay that. Because we'll pay it one way or the other.
But of course, our current vendor knows that. So when this goes out to RFP, they will be one of the groups bidding on it, and they will know that they have a lower startup cost, no startup cost, basically. So they're certainly going to be in position to beat the other vendors. I mean, because they're going to know that the other vendors have to take on that initial cost.
Competition makes it much more challenging, and that's a good thing for us.
Yeah.
Knowing that, that's exactly what I have seen throughout the years in dealing with transportation in northern Wisconsin, that when you bring people in on an RFP and you have a company already there, they're going to play off of that and they're going to do a better job in most cases. You know, it puts the pressure on people. Let's face it, it's competition right now. And
Right.
We want,
But
and we
the
want to win
risk
this
is-
competition.
The risk is another company buying the business and then not knowing what the service levels are going to be. That's the risk.
That's the risk.
So we may have to be put in a position where a company comes in X% under, and we're going to have to say, no, we're not going with the lowest bid because we're concerned about service. That's going to be a hell of a conversation to have with the community in this climate.
But it's a conversation that will have to take place.
Yeah, I don't think it would be as hard of a conversation as you think, only because normally I would say yes. Anytime you don't pick the lowest bidder, it's a very hard conversation. This may be one exception because of all of the complaints we've received about busing. And there are a lot of people out there that probably don't want us just to go with the lowest bidder. They want us to go with a reasonable bid that can carry a very high percentage of routes actually happening.
We have to think about our bus drivers too. They aren't directly our employees like they used to be in the old days. But you say 80%, even 90% of them will be new bus drivers with the new company. But that puts them under a lot of stress, worrying whether they're going to have a job. Are they going to take a pay cut? You know, and we want our bus drivers to be happy because that is a special job. You get up in the morning when it's dark and you go to work, and then you got that chunk of the day that really can't be filled with another job. And then you have to go back out at night and get home in the dark much of the year. So we have to keep them in mind too when we consider this and consider what's going to happen when
We have it on record that Lance is going to lead that conversation when the time comes. So.
It's recorded.
I do want to support Lance with this here, because I think if we've heard anything from our community lately, it's that relationships matter, and building those relationships and having trust. And if we can go to them and say, yes, you're right, we went with the second or whatever it might be, but we're basing it on relationships and a long-term standing relationships and care for the people that work for them, I'm willing to back Lance on this conversation.
There you go. All right. I am seeking a motion to approve allowing the Wausau School District to send out requests for proposals, RFPs, for new transportation contract that begins July 1st, 2025.
Do we want to see something from our current vendor before we send it out, or what do we want to do?
I don't think it would hurt.
Do we have time in our timetable to have those discussions?
Yeah, we just have to update the RFP with the
Yep.
dates and stuff like that. You do have time in your timetable to do that. Yes, sir.
All right.
Would a reasonable time frame be our next board meeting,
June 10th.
June 10? Is that reasonable, do you think?
I believe so.
All right. I'm gonna put a motion on to postpone this motion.
I'll second it. Did you first it? Or?
Right, first it.
I'll second it.
Second it, okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we move on.
Just to be clear, I wasn't trying to cut you out of this process. If you can be
Not at all.
of value in this, please do so.
Part of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
As much as Josh needs me,
All right,
and that's it.
great.
And then,
Thank you.
And timing, of course, is still really important, because if we are going to go to RFP, the more time we have, the better to get
So,
response.
look, as I had mentioned, we're ahead of the eight ball, and Wausau has done an excellent job with that. The nice part about this part, at June 10th, it's school's out. So if they have to put something together as a business, when they're not operating and having to run around, it's really an advantage to have this, an RFP put out in the summertime. So although we had planned on putting it out tomorrow, we delayed that a month. That still gives us July and August to put that together. It may not come to, and this is up to Josh, it may not come to you in October, it might be November instead, but that still would give enough time for another vendor to get in here and rent property and do the right things. I believe the timetable is still very workable for any incumbent.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, moving on. Next item, Sandy Lewins and Melanie Hansen will share a presentation on wit and wisdom. And along with everybody else. There you go.
There we go. Sandy Lewins, I'm one of the district literacy coordinators.
All right, we're set to go? All right. So we just wanted to kind of provide a brief kind of recap for some of our new board members. So in April, we shared with the board an update which detailed both Act 20 and our current K2 resource. We wanted to provide some background information for our new board members this evening. Wausau School District has had the curricular resource at grades K2 for the past 10 years. Super Kids has only a K2 program, so our grades 3 through 5 have been using a different resource during the last 10 years. 2 years ago, we vetted and adopted Wit and Wisdom for grades 3 through 5 only. We were scheduled to vet the K2 resources this year, and due to Act 20, this has shifted our customary vetting process. Also, since our initial Super Kids adoption, our Wisconsin state standards have been revised in 2020, as well as the ELA instructional framework for learning. While awaiting information from the state, we began our vetting process with focusing on the standards and the strengths of our universal instruction. We used guidelines from the DPI to guide this work. We focused on the 2020 Wisconsin state standards as we worked to identify priority standards at each grade level. We also took a look at our district trend data and the need to update our universal instruction to align to the level of the learning that our standards articulate. So this slide is an example of the standards work that the ELA leadership engaged in throughout this year. The highlighting shows key priorities identified at each grade level. We then had cross-grade level conversations to help understand how student learning builds from grade level to grade level. We also connected these priorities to the Wisconsin Forward exam, knowing that one indicator of strong universal instruction is the Wisconsin State Forward exam, which Sandy is going to discuss next.
So I pulled some of our data, and the one last time I had shared with you the forward exam data. So this time I kind of pulled off of our FAST exam. This is our district-wide screener. It is given in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring. Our reading screener has changed in this current year. We now utilize iReady, but our data trends have stayed very stagnant and very consistent across the years. As you can see, we average approximately 38 to 48% of our students performing below benchmark. And those kind of stagnant trends across those years show us that we need to strengthen our universal resource in order to support our students' needs. So as we've kind of continued through and as we've continued to hear information related to Act 20, both by the state and then CESA 6 provides office hours, which are just a very wonderful free opportunity they give for anyone in the state. And they kind of help guide and clarify some of that information. We've really been working on sharing that information with staff here. So we have provided lots of opportunities for our ELA leadership team, and then on February 19th, Melanie, myself, and then Lindsay Ludholtz, who volunteered to help us, had a meeting, kind of breakout sessions with all K-5 teachers. And at that time, we gave them the newest updates that we had known related to Act 20. There were at that point 4 curricular resources that were going to be sent to the Joint Finance Committee to be looked at. They're listed on there. And then we kind of gave them some opportunity for questions and answers and just really hear where their mindset was with that time. In March of this year, they finally brought the curricular resources to the Joint Finance Committee. So DPI also did an independent review of all the resources that were provided, and then the advisory committee had their recommendations. The Joint Finance Committee went with the advisory committee's 4 recommendations, of which Wit and Wisdom was 1. Super Kids did not score to be recommended by either of the 2 committees that looked at the different recommendations. In addition, we have been in a lot of conversations with staff and the ELA leadership team, and they really feel that having a cohesive K-5 curriculum that has an explicit and systematic approach would be that benefit and that support they need in order to really reach all those students. We are aware that Act 20 has kind of changed things in terms of how we would normally go about a lot of these processes. As a team, we've really tried to give a lot of voice as much as we can to staff through conversations with the ELA leadership team. We are looking at Cox Campus, which is the Act 20 required teacher training we had discussed. And we put out a survey for all K-3 staff if they were interested in being a facilitator. We got a really positive result, and we have currently 14 staff members who are going through the learning right now. Melanie and I also did that, and it is a very intensive, very wonderful science of reading based approach. And in addition, then we've been working with Julie and Katie and the elementary scheduling team to really ensure that we are aligning the elementary schedule with what we know is going to be needed in order to support our students moving forward.
Can I just add,
Yep.
as we transition too, we've gotten some feedback from some teachers that have finished the Cox Campus courses, and they're very impressed and really excited about everything that they've learned in that program. So we're really excited about that choice for the district.
On April 25th then, so kind of based off of those recommendations by the Joint Finance Committee, the coordinator team, the education department, the special ed department all made the decision to move to the adoption of Wit and Wisdom paired with really great reading and geodes. And we created a collaborative recording that was released to all staff on April 25th, notifying them of the intent to do that. We wanted to ensure they were hearing a consistent message, and obviously across all buildings, we were unable to have someone in each of those, and that we wanted them to hear that same message at the same time.
All right, so after the joint finance vote, and I think we sat in front of you and we kind of said, you know, here are our options, and our hands are a little bit tied with Act 20. So after the joint finance committee voted, we looked for opportunities then for our ELA leadership to kind of research and learn about K2 structures, the literacy framework, and what Wit and Wisdom looks like paired with really great reading, providing all that foundational support for our students. We wanted to use the rest of our leadership hours this year, kind of learning and doing things. I think if I can quote one of our members, if we're going to do something, let's do it well. And so we really set up a lot of opportunities for our ELA leadership team to learn from other districts. We looked for some of those rock stars in Wit and Wisdom in other states, not even just Wisconsin. One of the opportunities that we found is we just had a Google Meet with a district in the Southern Minnesota School District. We had a principal reach out to us saying that his staff of kindergarten, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers would love to share their success. Minnesota has Wit and Wisdom only as their endorsed curricular resource.
For the knowledge-based, yes.
Yep. So they actually are a school that has only been in year one of implementation. They have had so many schools come and visit them that they had to limit the times that they could support others. So we reached out to them and had some, excuse me, I'm very thirsty, some conversations with them. And then actually today, we met with a school in the eastern part of the state and had a question and answer session with them. And tomorrow we are going to observe at DC Everest to see one of their literacy instructional blocks. Okay, so as we stated in the April meeting, some of our newer teachers have not taught, oh, thank you so much, Cassie, a cohesive K-5 instructional model, and that even though our traditional vetting process has shifted, we feel that it has really helped us build some very intentional, universal tools and strategies for all elementary teachers moving into the 24-25 school year. And as a result of this year-long process, we seek to ask you for your approval to adopt the Act 20 state-endorsed K-2 Wit and Wisdom resource paired with Really Great Reading and Geodes, knowing that Really Great Reading will also support grade 3 in this resource adoption.
So I'm seeking a motion to approve the adoption of the Act 20 endorsed K-3 English Language Arts ELA curricular resource of Wit and Wisdom and Geodes, paired with Really Great Reading for full implementation beginning in 2024-25 academic year as presented. So, and then second, questions? Any follow-ups?
I have one question. I think having the same resource, K-5 makes a lot of sense. Wit and Wisdom is one of the, it might have even been the only one on the list that you can't just do everything with Wit and Wisdom. You have to add these other supplements to it.
Correct.
Do you have any, it would seem to me, from a business decision, it would make sense for Wit and Wisdom to expand its offerings so that districts no longer have to purchase things from, because that's kind of a negative, that it might even turn some districts away from Wit and Wisdom, knowing that you have to purchase in maybe not even the cost, but just have to learn these other additions to it as opposed to just one resource that handles everything. Do you have any knowledge from Wit and Wisdom of them thinking about expanding that so that isn't the case anymore?
Well, they are doing they're working on a third edition right now. It will be released in a few years. They're going to pilot it in some school districts, but it still will not contain that foundational piece. They've partnered with Wilson Foundation, Really Great Reading, and they have not a legal copyright with UFly, which is another strategy that Sandy and I have been using with our title teachers, and we've gotten some really positive feedback with UFly as well. With the Geodes, they are the decodable text that allow students to apply and practice in their writing and transfer it into their reading. So the Geodes has a legal copyright tied to foundational skills, like let's say it's a letter sound or a blend or a trigraph or something. Wilson has a legal copyright with Really Great Reading and Geodes, Wilson has a legal copyright with the Geodes part of their program. Wit and Wisdom is written with the intention of being that inquiry knowledge building curricular resource. So the Wisconsin State Educational Framework for Literacy is now an inquiry-based model. So it aligns to that inquiry-based model structure. They have to then pair that with the foundational skills. With 3 through 5, our students should not be learning foundational skills still. We should be passing our little people to 3rd grade with some of those proficient reading skills, so it shouldn't be included in 3-5. So they've paired with Really Great Reading to kind of build that foundational program in their K-2, while also being inquiry building.
And then one other question, or really more of a comment. What I've heard in the past, a problem from the teacher's perspective is when we adopt a new resource that doesn't align with our grading, and how frustrating that is. So I hope there's something in place so that what our teachers are being asked to grade our students on and evaluate our students on aligns with this new resource so that it's actually matching up.
It's on our agenda to revise our report card. We won't be able to revise our report card, though, until all of our teachers in the district have training around the new standards that our ELA leadership team kind of vetted and adopted together this year as a committee. So after they kind of have that knowledge of the standards, then we can start to revise our report card appropriately. So,
And my yes and off of that would be to align the report card to the standard. So it does not matter what the curricular resource is, which is what gets us as in all districts, into trouble a lot of times. We align to a resource, and then when the resource goes away, we feel very unknown. But to really, Melanie has been doing such great work on the standards, so then they'll still always be able to have that connection.
So this will be flexible. You'll be able to add and subtract and make it ours versus just theirs. We're just not placing it all in front of us, now we got to do all of that, but we can still add and subtract, correct?
I think too, once our staff has this Cox campus training, a lot of the pieces are gonna really click together. Sandy and I have been working really hard together. Sandy's been doing a great job with our title teachers. We've really been trying to work on universal strategies with all of our teachers so that if our resource changes, the strategies don't go away. They still live with all of, those tools live with all of our teachers.
Flexibility. Other questions from the board? Go ahead. Jean.
I just wanted to know, has the board gotten a presentation about what Act 20 is?
We did that in April,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thanks.
But if you're interested in getting a little catch-up class, reach out to Sandy and I, and we'd be happy to fill you in.
Definitely.
They do a very good job, so.
There's a lot to it, and there was a lot that was, I mean, there are still pieces that we are waiting to get for the state to finalize.
Okay, so with that, we thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
presenting it to
Thank
us.
you.
The motion's on the table, the questions are here, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next item. Libby White will share multilingual and newcomer student updates and news of Community Foundation and Greenheck Grant Award. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, President Boucher, Dr. Helt, and board members. I want to introduce my esteemed colleague Shannon Charbonneau. Apologize for not having you on that introduction. So yes, we are here to just give some good news for the board here, and we'll go through our presentation this evening. Oh, I have a clicker. Thank you. You guys are all looking at me. Just a quick point of reference. I think we all know that our immigrant and refugees have increased in the state of Wisconsin. And so our immigrant and refugees have increased. And so this was something provided by DPI to show over the last few years, our incoming students in our state. Do you want to take that one?
Oh, sure. We have a couple of graphs for you. You might have seen them already in the board book. This particular graph just displays the number of multilingual students we have at each school. So this is the total. This does not include newcomer and refugee, or it does include newcomer and refugees as well as the students that we serve locally. And then this is the percent. So we had the number and now we have the percent. So you can see that Lincoln Elementary is, up over 25% of their student population is a multilingual learner. And we have quite a few at 20 or 15% as well. Here, you saw the state trends, the increasing number of refugee and immigrant students that we're serving across the state. Take a look at Wausau School District. So just 2 years ago, we were just hitting the 50 mark of students enrolling as refugee and immigrants. And if we jump to today, last count was 195, Libby, was that it just this year?
Sure. This is just our newcomer or newly arrived students this school year. And we thought we'd just show you where those students lie throughout the district there. So,
And it's not at all our schools. We do not have newcomers at all of our schools, but you can see that Hawthorne Hills has welcomed the most. Yeah.
yes. And I believe you've seen this too, but just kind of pointing out that just due to housing and job opportunities, our newly arrived students are arriving all throughout the Wausau School District, physically in the boundary area. So Shannon led something new this year, and for our new board members, we had a K-5 newcomer center, and we housed that at John Marshall, thinking that possibly with our new plans and some of our combining schools, that we would have space at John Marshall. So we thought we'd put together some of the things that we've learned throughout the experience with John Marshall.
Well, the Newcomer Center has been a lot of fun. We've seen a lot of student growth. Today I'm working with some of the students, and they're just talking in complete sentences. I had a student come, she had a problem, and she's talking to the newcomer teacher and myself, and she was able to express herself, and that was awesome. Just a few months ago, she might not have been able to express herself so eloquently in English. So it's been a really good time, and it's a thriving environment for our students. With that said, Hawthorne Hills, as you see, has welcomed 30 newcomers at that elementary as well. And again, they've done a great job setting up newcomer programming there and having a thriving environment for those students. Lincoln as well. Neighborhood school of choice. We have found that welcoming the families and enrolling the families, we offer them the option to attend the Newcomer Center. Most of the families want to go to their neighborhood school. That's G.D. Jones right there across the street. That's the kind of response that we're getting from some of the families. That's our school. And so many families have chosen to stay at their neighborhood school.
So, and then we've just learned a lot about how a newcomer center works, and we do provide lots of time for those newcomers to be in with their peers in their regular classroom. So actually, maybe we'll just go to this while we're speaking about it. So this is an example of when newcomers arrived at John Marshall. So you'll see a 4th grade schedule there. So we just thought we'd highlight the red arrow. Those are the number of times that those students, even though maybe they only have a few words of English, go with their peers and with their regular classroom teacher and interact, learn social English, and make friends and build relationships and all of that. So basically we started to kind of see that that programming can be easily replicated in all of our buildings. So that was kind of what we've learned throughout the year. We also have advanced and learned a lot about all the digital tools that are available to us. We'll talk a little bit more towards the end of the presentation. And then we realize now we have students leaving John Marshall, going back to their home schools, and it's been another transition for students. And as the board has always honored neighborhood schools and obviously reducing the number of transitions that students have throughout their career, that was one thing that we took note of. I think we have spent, Shannon particularly, spent a lot of time with very personal connection, meeting families, registering them, getting to know their former schooling history, the cultural information and needs that they have. And so that has been very important, and we have really put that at the front of our needs for families.
The unpredictable. Yeah, we.
Okay, yes, you're right. So, for instance, ironically, John Marshall only had 1 or 2 newcomers when we put the newcomer placement there, but then our organization ECDC that we work with had to build a reputation or a relationship with a local renter, tenant or landlord, and all of a sudden John Marshall had a very huge increase in their newcomers that came to John Marshall. So we really realized that it's very unpredictable around the city where people are going to live. We're not telling people where to live. We just have to wait until they register, just like all of our students, and then meet their needs in those schools.
So we go back to the schedule a little
Sure,
bit?
yeah.
So when you look at this schedule, this is how our students start in newcomer programming.
But then once we get to know them a little bit, we know their skills, they begin to transition, and some much more quickly than others. We had a student, for instance, transition almost within the first week full-time into his math class because he had really strong math skills. Whereas in his ELL section, he stayed primarily in the newcomer center. The young lady I was talking about, the student that I was mentioning earlier that was having a problem and came to talk to us about, she's almost full-time in her classroom with her classroom peers and checks in with us at the newcomer center. So everybody has a different schedule. It's released as the child sees growth, where their strengths are, and every child is unique and comes to us from different living circumstances when they arrive. And we felt like we could replicate this as well.
So our major findings, just to kind of restate, that newcomer families reside throughout the district boundaries, more newcomer program is needed to meet the needs of our students and families, and that a single centralized program needs to be expanded. So going forward, we want to make sure that you were informed and had an opportunity to ask questions, that we will provide multilingual programming in all schools at all grade levels, and that's for K through 12. Our department, we've been lucky to, have the resources to be able to support our multilingual teachers and the classroom and content teachers, and of course the students. So some of those items we will provide are curriculum resources, professional development, instructional coaching, scheduling, and newcomer course on Canvas. We are also very lucky to be tagging onto the Act 20 resources. So for instance, we will have all of our multilingual teachers, experiencing the Cox campus, which has a very deep dive into oral language. So we're really excited about that. We are planning on the students to having fewer transitions, more stability, and homeschool connections. And then, of course, also more convenient and accessible for families to participate in school events. We thought it would be interesting for the board to know just kind of what are the top 10 supports that are needed for newcomer success. So we put that together for you, and these will be the items that we'll be working strongly on as we plan for the next school year. We also, have our wonderful tech integration department here at Wausau School District. We have worked collaboratively all year, and these are some of the tech tools that we've added. 2 different translation apps. We are purchasing some translation devices. Canva is available to all teachers and students, and it has lots of translation opportunities there. Apple Translate has very good resources. For instance, the students can hard double tap on their iPad and it'll come up and just say translate, and they can choose their language. Our secondary students are receiving, although they're issued a Chromebook, they're also issued an iPad so that they can help very easily and be a little bit more mobile with Google Translate. Our administrative assistants, they are right on the front line, and they have been awesome. They were trained, each of the school offices have an iPad, and all the admin assistants and anyone that works with families will use Google Translate if a family comes in to register, or for phone calls, emails. They've really hooked into it and done an awesome job. And then we do purchase a certified language line, and that's accessed by anyone in the district. And you can 24/7, have access to any interpreter that you would need.
Which has been awesome because we have over 40 languages in the school district.
I was just going to ask, how many languages do we have? 40? Over 40?
Over 40, closer to, was it 42, 45 last count?
So at this time, our top languages are English, Hmong, Spanish, Swahili, different dialects of Pashto, and Laotian.
And we've welcomed Rohingya, Somali recently as well.
think of any others.
So one thing that we are pleased to announce is that we applied and were awarded a grant. I mentioned to you, I'll just kind of start here. So there are companies, the company started with the travel business and now has branched into education. So these devices are being used around the country for our newcomers, but they look a lot like AirPods that people wear, but it does translate. The student can either go on their phone or their iPad and then set to the language that they would like. So we, with Dr. Hiltz's help, worked with our wonderful community foundation and also the Green Heck Foundation, and we're awarded $16,350. And those, we are putting the order in and hope to have almost 45 devices. So they're about $300 each. And we ordered some lock storage cabinets and some sanitizing stations. And we've had Monica Hans over at Mir has been piloting it the last few months. And so she gave some really great tips. She said she'd have some students that a teacher would start playing a video, and the students put in their time kettle device, and then were able to hear that translated into their home language. I think initially thought they'd be great at family events and even conferences. We know how hard it is sometimes to get real life interpreters, and then with the variety of languages. We have been lucky to hire a paraprofessional in the district at Horace Mann who speaks Swahili, and have had some other inquiries. So we're really looking, as our newcomers get established, also making sure that some of those adults become our employees.
Libby, how many languages can these translate within a classroom simultaneously?
Oh, right, up to 6, correct, yep. And then you can also split, so if there's 2 students who are Spanish speaking, they could just use one of the little devices in their ear, and then the other student could take another one. So you could have up to 12 students. So yeah, we are very thankful to our partners around the community, and they are excited. Our main goal is thinking about just building the workforce and the diversity in Wausau. So it's really exciting that our community partners are also interested in helping us do that. If you're interested to know more, I did put a link on there that there's some interviews of students and other districts that are using that around the country. But any questions for our team?
Anyone at the board? No. Well done. Gives us a very good understanding of what you are doing and how important it is for transitioning students into our district.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, we thank you for your support.
Next item on the agenda, 2024-25 teacher contract approvals. Ms. Gundrum will present the list of teacher contracts to approve for 2024-2025 school year.
Thank you. In front of you on the agenda is a 15-page document of the teacher contracts that would be scheduled for renewal for the 2024-25 school year. I do have 2 small corrections that I do want to make sure that I note. I'm sad that they showed up, and at the same time, at least it's only 2 out of a page of 15, or document of 15. On page 5 near the bottom, Casey Hildebrandt is scheduled on the list as a 0.94 renewal. It's actually a 1.0. He started a couple days into the school year, so his current contract was prorated, and we missed that correction. And then Jenna Troy is on page 13, about mid-page, and she is reflected as a 1.1, and it should be 1.0. She was on an overload this year, and she's actually shifting into a new position that'll just be a 1.0 straight FTE. So I would ask for
approval of the school board to issue these teacher contracts for the 24-25 school year with those two small edits to the list that was presented to you, please.
So I'm seeking a motion to approve the list of teacher contracts for 2024-5 as presented. Roll call?
As amended.
Oh, sorry. Yes, so put the motion forward for the amendment, okay? And I need a second on that. I'm putting the motion forward. Second, okay? Any questions? Would be on the amendment. Questions on the amendment? Have to take that first. Nope, okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Amendment carries. And then going back to the motion, I've already stated it and put that forward.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, second the motion. Any questions?
Yes. Now, we're going to approve these, but this is for their contract. If we decide as a board to put one or two of the staff back at EEA, that won't.
This, the contracts do not include the assignment, so staff can be reassigned at any point in time. So for example, the staff that were reassigned from EEA to another location and they accepted that transfer, they're on this list just as a 1.0, but if they were to be reassigned back, that happens invisibly and that doesn't need further board action.
Okay.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item, at the April Education Operations Committee meeting, Cale Bushman presented a proposed Longfellow Administration Team Reorganization Plan. Do you have any other additions to that, Cale? No additions. No additions? Okay. I'm seeking a motion to accept the LAT, Longfellow Administration Team Reorganization Plan as presented, including accepting of the Assistant Superintendent of Academics job description.
So moved.
Okay, got a move, and we got a second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, does anybody have additional information that you have picked up in the last couple of weeks since our last meeting?
Just like an hour of stuff I want to.
I don't want that. I don't want that.
Keep it all in.
I'm looking at time here.
I have 30 seconds. I went to the Wausau School Foundation.
Holding you to 30 seconds. There you go.
Okay, well, it has to start now then. I went to the Wausau School Foundation meeting, and from them, I just want to report that they are really hopeful and seeking to have a very positive relationship with the board and the superintendent going forward, and they would like us all to please volunteer for things.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, moving on to legislative liaison.
Yeah.
Mr. Sillers?
Nothing is happening that is affecting us currently, so no report.
No report? That was the amendment that he was going to give for an hour and a half, Pat, so I just, I did see that. Dr. Hiltz, any brief comments?
Nothing to add.
Okay. I'm looking at, we need to refer to the written report and ask that this report, the liaison report, be entered into the official record. And Cassie, you will take care of that. Thank you very much. All right, I'm seeking a motion to enter closed session to discuss, to consider the employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of an employee pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.851C and consideration of contracts for final notice of non-renewal of 19.851C as well.
I can make that motion to enter the closed.
Okay, second, and now roll call.
Sarah Brock? Aye. John Creasher? Pat McKee?
Yes.
Jennifer Paoli? Joanna Reyes?
Yes.
Jane Roosh?
Yes.
Corey Sillers?
Yes.
Lance Trollope?
Yes.
Jim Boucher?
Yes. Thank you very much.